Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya Profesor Dr. Sunyono MSI, Dekan Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan Universitas Lampung. Izin menyampaikan profil singkat Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan Universitas Lampung. Berdirinya FKIP Unila ini berawal dari Institut Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan IKIP Jakarta Cabang Tanjung Karang pada tahun 1966-1967. Kemudian berdasarkan keputusan Presiden Republik Indonesia nomor 1 tahun 1968 tanggal 1 Januari 1968, IKIP Jakarta Cabang Tanjung Karang itu diintegrasikan ke Universitas Lampung menjadi dua fakultas, yaitu Fakultas Keguruan dan Fakultas Ilmu Pendidikan. Selanjutnya atas dasar peraturan pemerintah nomor 5 tahun 1980 dan keputusan Presiden Republik Indonesia nomor 42/M/1982, Fakultas Keguruan dan Fakultas Ilmu Pendidikan digabung menjadi satu fakultas, yaitu Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan atau FKIP Universitas Lampung. Nah, sejak saat itulah, sejak bergabungnya FK dan FIP menjadi FKIP, hingga saat ini telah mengalami 10 kali pergantian pimpinan fakultas, yaitu Dekan FKIP, dan saya adalah Dekan FKIP Unila yang ke-10. Jumlah dosen FKIP hingga saat ini sebanyak 200.
Beli durian ke pasar malam, ditemani bulan bermandikan cahaya. Hari ini webinar pembelajaran mendalam menuju pendidikan bermutu untuk semua. Cinta itu penuh suka duka. Pengalaman Ayu Ting Ting. Marilah webinar ini kita buka untuk belajar deep learning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Tabik pun.
Ya pun.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening time for Australia. We are here today with you for the international webinar in the title What, Why, and How Deep Learning in International and Indonesian Contexts. Today, Monday, January 13, 2025. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Chika Rahayu. I'm a lecturer of teacher training and education faculty of Lampung University. I'm so grateful for welcoming Mr. Dr. Rizwandi, Master Education, the Acting Dean of the Teacher Training and Education of Lampung University. Mr. Max Drami as our keynote speaker from Global Facilitator New Pedagogical Deep Learning Australia. Mr. Yanuar Dwi Prasetyo, PhD, keynote speaker from Deep Learning Indonesia and lecturer of Teacher Training and Education Faculty of Lampung University. Welcome, Mr. Max and Mr. Yanuar. We are so happy for having your booth in this event. And I extend my best regrets to all attendants and participants. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your position because the agenda is singing the national anthem of Indonesia, Hymne Unila, and March Unila. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your position.
Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan Universitas Lampung berjuang bekerja mencerdaskan masyarakat Republik Indonesia, bertekad jadi lembaga inspiratif progresif yang profesional bermartabat agar mampu hasilkan tenaga kependidikan kritis, cerdas, berakhlak mulia. Iptek dan seni dikembangkan melalui penelitian, mengabdi kepada masyarakat, memajukan pendidikan, menjunjung pengembangan masyarakat ilmiah dan jiwa profesionalisme, edukatif, inovatif, yang religius, itu semangat utama. FKIP Unila akan terus berkarya demi bangsa Indonesia. FKIP Unila akan terus berkarya demi bangsa Indonesia.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, please take a moment for prayer. We'll be led by Dr. Muhammad Kaulan Karima, Master Education. Dr. Muhammad Kaulan, time is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bapak Ibu, para peserta yang kami hormati, izinkan kami memandu doa pada pagi yang berbahagia ini menurut ajaran Islam, dan bagi Bapak Ibu yang lain bisa menyesuaikan dengan ajaran dan keyakinan masing-masing. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin, wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad. Allahumma ij'al jam'ana hadza jam'an marhuma wa mashkura. Ya Allah, jadikanlah pertemuan kami ini pertemuan yang Engkau rahmati, yang kami bersyukur atas segala nikmat-Mu. Wa tafarraqana tafarraqan ma'suma. Dan setelah pertemuan ini, jadikanlah kami orang-orang yang mendapatkan ampunan-Mu, karena kami sadari bahwa masih banyak kesalahan dan kekurangan kami dalam pengabdian bagi agama dan bangsa ini. Allahumma inna nas'aluka ilman nafi'an wa fikran wasi'an wa qalban khashi'an. Ya Allah, kami bermohon dalam mengikuti webinar ini, berikanlah kami ilmu yang bermanfaat, pemikiran yang luas dan komprehensif, serta hati yang khusyuk dan ikhlas. Ya Allah, ridailah dan berkahilah kegiatan webinar kami ini, serta terimalah doa, niat, dan usaha kami dalam memperbaiki dan mengembangkan pendidikan bagi negeri ini dengan komunitas deep learning yang telah terbentuk ini. Akhirnya ya Allah, hanya kepadamu-lah kami berserah diri dan berharap terkabul segala doa dan pinta. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar. Wa sallallahu wasallam alaihi walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mr. Kaulan. May God blessing always be upon us and this event shower of bless and goodness. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please be informed that this webinar is conducted live on this platform and our YouTube channel at FKIP Unila. Ladies and gentlemen, next opening speech from Mr. Dr. Rizwandi, Master Education, the Acting Dean of Teacher Training and Education Faculty of Lampung University. Time is yours.
Thank you, Ibu Cika Rahayu. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Tabi
wabarakatuh.
pun.
Iya pun.
Good morning, everyone. Distinguished keynote speakers, lecturers, teachers, educational practitioners, and students, all welcome to international webinar held by collaboration with Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas Lampung, Deep Learning, Indonesian Community, and New Pedagogies for Deep Learning Australia. The Honorable invite speaker, Mr. Max Drumming, as the Global Facilitator of New Pedagogic for Deep Learning Australia, and Mr. Januar Dwi Prasetyo, PhD, the lecturer at Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas Lampung. Tentunya pertama kali mari sama-sama kita memanjatkan puji syukur kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa taala, Tuhan yang Maha Pengasih dan Penyayang, karena atas izinnya pada hari ini Senin tanggal 13 Januari 2025 kita dapat berkumpul secara virtual di ruang Zoom meeting ini dalam rangka mengikuti acara webinar internasional pertama. Jadi ini adalah webinar internasional pertama di tahun 2025 dan diadakan atas kerjasama antara FKIP Unila, Komunitas Deep Learning Indonesia, dan New Pedagogies for Deep Learning Australia. Info terakhir pagi hari ini bahwa partisipan yang mengikuti kegiatan ini baik melalui Zoom meeting maupun melalui link YouTube lebih dari 1.000. Ini suatu kebanggaan bagi Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan Universitas Lampung. Tema yang diangkat juga sangat seksi sekali, yaitu what, why, and how deep learning in international and Indonesian context. Jadi ini menjadi hal yang sangat baru secara khusus dunia pendidikan di Indonesia yang insya Allah melalui kementerian akan melaksanakan dan mengimplementasikan deep learning ini. Bapak Ibu hadirin yang berbahagia, seperti yang kita ketahui bahwa deep learning itu atau yang sering mungkin kita terjemahkan sebagai pembelajaran mendalam merupakan pendekatan pembelajaran yang berfokus pada pengalaman belajar yang bermakna bagi siswa. Deep learning tidak hanya sekedar teknik belajar yang menekankan pada menghafal, tetapi lebih ke arah pemahaman dan pemikiran kritis yang berkelanjutan. Di Indonesia sendiri, deep learning ini akan diimplementasikan sembari menunggu kebijakan kurikulum baru dari kementerian. Dan ini tentunya menjadi titik awal dari para dunia pendidikan untuk mempersiapkan diri. Deep learning itu menitik beratkan pada 3 pilar utama: mindful, meaningful, and joyful. Jadi pilar-pilar ini menekankan pemahaman berkaitan dengan konten, kemudian relevansi praktis, dan pengalaman belajar yang bermakna bagi setiap siswa. Dengan demikian, kegiatan webinar internasional ini merupakan salah satu wadah dan juga forum yang sangat tepat bagi Bapak Ibu sekalian untuk mengikutinya, di mana para pemangku kepentingan, dalam hal ini dosen, kemudian guru, praktisi pendidikan, dan juga mahasiswa bersama-sama untuk saling berbagi dan saling belajar, khususnya berkaitan dengan kebijakan baru nantinya yang akan diterapkan di berbagai satuan pendidikan di Indonesia, yaitu deep learning. Melalui webinar ini, kita semua juga akan mendapatkan beragam perspektif, tentunya dari ahlinya langsung. Dalam hal ini adalah Mr. Max Dreming. Beliau adalah Global Facilitator of New Pedagogic for the Planning Australia. Saya selaku PLT, Dekan Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan Universitas Lampung, sangat mengapresiasi kegiatan webinar ini, khususnya kepada panitia, tim komunitas Deep Learning Indonesia yang telah menginisiasi sekaligus sebagai inisiator komunitas Deep Learning Indonesia. Yang pertama, mengkaji deep learning lebih mendalam. Berharap ke depannya kegiatan ini berkelanjutan memberikan manfaat kepada para pemangku kepentingan, dosen, guru, praktisi pendidikan, dan juga mahasiswa dalam menerapkan deep learning dalam konteks pendidikan. Dengan mengucapkan Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, saya buka kegiatan webinar. Kegiatan internasional webinar dengan tema What, Why, and How Deep Learning in International and Indonesian Context. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mr. Dr. Rizwandi, for your speech. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before going to the main agenda, we will have a documentation session. And may I kindly invite all of the participants to open the video? We start from the first slide. Ready? Okay, smile. Operator, please help me. Okay. Okay, the second slide. Okay, smile. The third slide. Next. Okay. Next slide. Okay. Okay, be patient because we have quite a lot of slides. Next slide. Yep. Yes. 8. Wow. Very good. Yep. Okay. Okay, last slide. Okay, smile. Okay, finish. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your cooperation. Don't forget to share this moment today through with social media, tag Instagram deeplearning.indonesia and official_FKIP Unila and official_Unila. Okay, now the moment we have all been waiting for has finally arrived. We are so honored to invite our special keynote speakers, Mr. Max and Mr. Yanwar. And this section will be led by Dr. Siti Rahmasari, Master Education, as our moderator. Dr. Siti Rahmasari is a researcher and lecturer of Teacher Training and Education Faculty of Lampung University. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give big applause for our moderator, Dr. Siti. Time is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Chika. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes, it's clear.
Yes. Well, we will begin our main session. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please, because our webinar is about to begin. Please have a nice seat, and thank you very much for preparing yourself to join our seminar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon for Australian time. Tabi pun. Respectable the acting dean, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas Lampung, Dr. Rizwandi, Master of Education, and thank you for giving welcoming speech for this seminar, sir. The Honorable all distinguished speakers, lecturers, teachers, educational practitioners, and also the students. I am Siti Rahmasari. It gives me a great pleasure to be the moderator for the international webinar with the themes what, why, and how deep learning in international and also in Indonesian context. And everyone, I do believe you are all hearing about deep learning recently. And today's webinar, we will get a closer look into deep learning, including the design, implication, risk, opportunities, and also involve parties in both sides, international and Indonesian contexts. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to read a brief introduction to our two invited speakers. First, Mr. Max Rami. Mr. Max works as Global Capacity Building Facilitators, new pedagogies for deep learning, or we can short in NPDL, Australia. He is also a professional learning leader for the Professional Institute, Department of Education, Tasmania, Australia. And I do like one of his best quotes like this. We are looking at the way we teach, the way students learn, and the way leaders lead. It is a movement. That's very nice statement. And also the next, we have Mr. Yanwar Dwi Prasetyo, PhD. For right now, he works as a lecturer in English department, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas Lampung, and he completed his doctoral degree in TESOL, University of Limerick, Ireland in 2017, his master degree in the English and Foreign Language University, Hyderabad, India in 2012, and his bachelor degree in Sekolah Tinggi Agama Islam Negeri Tulung Agung in 2008. Before the presentation begins, let me tell you how these seminars will run. Firstly, the speakers will present the material about an hour or more. And after that, we will 15 minutes or more for Q&A time. And the session will be continued with an hour presentation by the second speakers. And following that, we will have a question and answer session for approximately 15 or more minutes. And finally, the session will be ended by a conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, now allow me to welcome Mr. Max and team to present the material of new pedagogies for deep learning. Mr. Max, are you there?
I am, yes. And let me just
Yes.
share a screen here.
Yes. Is it clear? It's clear. Is everything gonna be okay?
I think so. Thank you.
Okay. Well, everyone, Mr. Max will present his material about new pedagogies for deep learning. And Max, Mr. Max, the turn goes to you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be able to join you this morning, and wonderful to see the clip of your university, your campus, your areas, to give me a feeling of where I'm coming into virtually. So thank you for that. It is a pleasure to join you. I do many of these briefings, and I always enjoy connecting with others. Let me introduce you to our deep learning global team. Many of you will know Dr. Michael Fullen from Toronto, Ontario in Canada, Joanne Quinn. So Michael and Joanne began this work almost 12 years ago now. My role is to help schools and districts and networks take our thinking and implement that to make it happen in classrooms, across schools and across networks. And on the right of this screen, you can see Bailey Fullen, our program director, the man that keeps the wheels turning and keeps us informed and up to date with all we need to know. A little bit about who we are and where we cover. As I said, we've been working at this for 11 years now. We talk of our work as a knowledge building partnership. We learn from each other. We connect to each other as often as we can. Over those 11 years, we would estimate that we have influenced over 1 million students, 25,000 teachers, and over 3,000 schools. My role is to support most of the areas that you see on this map. I spent 5 years in the United States working across Northern and Southern America, and I returned back to Australia 3 years ago now to support what is a growing network of schools across the Asia Pacific. And it's a privilege to be able to do that. I wanted to share with you some of our fundamental beliefs so that you can get a feel of who we are as a group. So we believe that education is the most powerful force for improving our world. That our 6 global competencies critical to unleashing the potential of every learner to flourish in this complex world. We're mindful of equity, well-being. We recognize students as change makers. And so student agency, autonomy, voice and choice and leadership is critically important to us. We believe in learning by doing. We approach our work in a positive way, not looking for deficits, but looking to build strengths. Collaboration is so critical to our work together as this knowledge building partnership. Accelerates our collective innovation and capacity to influence. So some of our beliefs here. A little about today. At the end of my session, I will share a link to some documents. One will be a getting started guide. When we begin to work with new schools or districts or networks, we generally come together for 2 days, whether that be virtual or face-to-face. And we cover some of those topics that you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. Today, in 90 minutes, we're just going to touch on most of those areas. So this is a taste of the type of thing that we get together and do for 2 full days when we begin our work with new networks. And I'll come back and talk a little bit about that again a little later on. As we look at building deep learning regardless of your context. So I have worked from the deep south of Uruguay through to Hong Kong, through to North America, Canada, Asia. We have found that these phases of implementation are common across every single context. Today, we're located in this strategic design phase where we're perhaps thinking about engaging in deep learning, wondering how it might work. What does it look like? Sometimes we spend quite a deal of time having conversations about implementation. And when we're ready, we move to that second phase of clarity, really digging in to find and understand the tools, the processes. That usually lasts about 12 months. We then move into depth where we do the work more often. We engage more people and become more intentional about its leadership. And then beyond that, really start to work on sustainability? How do we make deep learning part of our culture, the way that we do things? Again, I'm going to come back to this diagram several times today, but know that this is a beginning. This is a place where every question is valuable, where everything is up for discussion, be able to build some of the understanding about how we move forward. So really, this is about reimagining learning for us. How might we reimagine learning for 2025? What are some of the things that we've needed to consider as we engaged in this work? What are the skills and attributes that our students need to survive and thrive in this increasingly complex world? How do we address equity and well-being? What did we learn from that phase of remote learning during the COVID-19 paradigm? What did we learn from that? How can we leverage and use technology? These are some of the questions that we've been seeking to answer through our deep learning work for over a decade now. Today, we're going to use a number of video clips. We're going to look at one in just a moment. I'm going to invite you, after we look at these video clips, to take a moment to reflect, to use the chat box, perhaps to just share some thinking. Again, a critical part of this work, and we have over 600 people in this webinar, is sharing and hearing each other's thinking, because it helps us build and clarify our own. In the video clips today, I've used some subtitles that I hope are accurate enough to make this a little easier for you. My apologies if there are misspellings or some incorrect grammar there. I've done my best at some short notice, so I hope they are helpful. Here's the question. As you watch this short video clip, what excites you? What ideas come to life? What are the sorts of things that run through your mind? Let's take a look.
Imagination is the key because you're using your knowledge, what you know, to make something that no one's made before.
If you're creative, then other people will be inspired by you, and then they'll keep pushing forward. So if you'll spread it to your friends, and then your friends spread to their friends, and then all over the world, everyone will have a happy life.
It's like a whole land of imagination where you feel like you can make anything or invent anything you want, and you make something that nobody has ever thinked of. When you grow up, you're going to be a pro. So you better get creative right now so you can remember those things, what you did from the past, carry those things, bring them to the future.
You can make anything you want, and you can make that change the world. One small thing could change the world, like one person can change the world.
I invite you for a moment. What do you feel? What do you think as you watched and listened to that film clip? Feel free to drop some thought into the chat box. motivated, happy, free, imagination, freedom to express, imagination driving change, inspiration, happy, creative, changing the world, enjoyment, fearless, P for better success, imagination is free, development, sharing, fly to the sky, happy, composed, fantasy to transform, excited, innovation, happy. Small changes start from ourselves. How can I foster those skills? Well-being, joy. Thank you. Thank you. So wonderful thoughts there. And they keep coming. Thank you. Exploration of new concepts. Motivated. Yeah. So trying to capture those feelings starts to give us the why behind our deep learning. If we want young people who can thrive in turbulent, complex times, apply thinking and innovation to new situations and change the world, we must reimagine learning. We must reimagine learning. I would argue that we are amidst the most complex times that perhaps this world has ever seen. Coming out of the COVID pandemic, the shifts that created for every single one of us globally, the geopolitical times, the advances of technology, highly complex. And so our purpose and our mission, if you like, at Deep Learning is to foster deep learning so that all learners can contribute to the common good, address global challenges, and flourish in a complex world. I want to pick up 2 or 3 words there. The notion of all learners. So our deep learning work is not designed to be a program that you take off the shelf and you give to your underachievers or your high achievers or any other subgroup. This work is designed for and work for every single student. It's about empowering them to be more than just themselves, to be able to contribute back to the world and not just survive, but to flourish in that world. So what we do, quite simply, together with all of our partners, is build knowledge and practices that foster that deep learning and ultimately shift systems. So a little bit of background about who we are. What's deep about deep learning, you may ask? Once again, I'm going to show you some video clips. Many of our schools, and we love it when our schools take videos of deep learning in action and they send them to us and we celebrate. We have many, many on our website. I'm going to show you one from an elementary school in Michigan in the USA. My questions again to you, and I'm going to ask you to share some thinking in the chat once again. As you watch this video clip, what makes it deep learning? What are some of the things that are changing for students? And what are some of the things that are changing for teachers? Let's get on our Dreamliner. Let's all magically transport across to Michigan, United States, and let's see some elementary school students talking about project around deep learning that they've been involved in. Let's take a look.
We feel glorious, glorious. We can make a difference. We know Project Root is the.
We started with a question, and the question was, how can we help those who have little to no access to healthy foods?
The marketing and fundraising team went together and they figured out the name Project Root. R stands for reaching others. The first O stands for opportunities. Second O stands for organic foods. The fourth letter T stands for together.
So we decided to go as a partnership for our first grade and fifth grade buddies.
I learned so many things through math, science, social studies, writing, reading, all the subjects. So many people are hungry, and actually 48.8 million people are in hunger.
We really just thought, well, if we make a school garden, then we could donate those foods. But then we thought,
we obviously can't take care of a garden when like Mother Nature is giving snow.
So we thought making a greenhouse is the best option to help the world.
The food, well, once they're ready and ripe, we'll give it to charities.
Such as food drives, Forgotten Harvest, UNICEF.
We still have the question of how do we raise money. We need experts to help us. So that's why we call them master gardeners.
So we thought if we kind of lock arms together with other businesses that are garden businesses, then that would kind of help us make the best greenhouse for all the kids to learn.
We feel glorious, glorious. We can make a difference.
We can make a difference. No matter how young or how old you are, you can still make an impact to the world.
So again, I invite you in the chat box. What made this deep? What's changing for students? What's changing for teachers in that sort of example? Let's hear your thoughts. Teachers guide, yes. Impact, collaboration. Students can explain with clarity, yes. Teachers as activators, yeah. Building awareness. Creating. Real world connections, absolutely. Being involved. Focused on the students, making students involved by doing activities, bringing teachers and students closer. Togetherness, collaboration. Beyond classroom, building empathy, creating students of critical and complex issues, doing something about it. Wonderful. Engagement, yeah. Not curriculum oriented, but you'll notice the young student said, I learnt so much in math and English and Korea. She named the subjects. So there's curriculum in there. Empathy. Connecting to reality. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you again. Contextual. Yeah. Thank you for those observations. Wonderful, wonderful. So we talk about our 6 global competencies. And someone mentioned the 4 C's in the text chat there. Here are our 6 global competencies. And deep learning is the process of developing one or more of these competencies. So if I go into a school and I see students actively developing character, then I know that deep learning is happening. I'm guessing that probably 4 of these, collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking, you'd be well familiar with because they have been on every list of 21st century skills for probably 35 years. We get When we were building our list of competencies, we looked at those and we knew that they were still powerful and relevant for today. But we added two of our own in the top left there. We added character, which is that inward-facing competency, about learning how to learn, about grit, tenacity, perseverance, resilience, growth mindset, empathy, compassion. So really inward-facing about your own self. And then we wanted to also add citizenship, the outward-facing perspective, where we're interested in others, in equity, well-being, compassion, about understanding diverse values and views, having that global perspective. And so these six are our global competencies. You'll notice that each is broken down into 3 or 4 different subdimensions. And that's really an important part of the shared language that we are building. Because if I went around a room of 30 people and said, describe to me what collaboration is, I would get 30 different answers. There would be some similarities. But this global partnership needs to have shared understanding and definitions of each of these competencies. And so what you see on screen, the 3 or 4 bullet points, help us build that shared understanding. And I'm going to elaborate a little on that shortly. Really interestingly, several days ago, World Economic Forum released their Future of Jobs report. They named the most important skills of 2025. And they are on screen. The green arrows indicate those that are directly correlated to our global competencies. So 8 of the first 10, a direct correlation to our deep learning competencies. And so if you are helping students develop those competencies, you are putting them in a great place in terms of the skills that are needed in our workforce. And in fact, the report talks about skills on the rise to 2030. I did the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 out of those 20 or 25 are directly incorporated in our deep learning. And so for me, there is no doubt that deep learning is helping build those powerful learners and employees and leaders of tomorrow. So I'm going to ask you a question. This is a difficult question. Which of the global competencies is the most important? I'm going to put on screen in just a moment a QR code, and it'll take you out to a website. I invite you onto this website. The simple question is, which is the most important global competency? You're able to enter which one you believe, and we'll take just a few minutes, and I'm going to track, and I'll put it up on screen. I'm going to track the responses to this question. Which of the global competencies is the most important? Perhaps scan that URL, drop the website in, and share your responses. And seeing the responses come through there. if you're on the website, you'll notice that the responses with greater numbers, the font enlarges. They get larger. Give it a couple more minutes. As I look at that website, what I'm seeing is that character and critical thinking seem to be neck and neck. I'll take a copy of the website at the end of the webinar and we'll get a final decision there. But why might we see character? In fact, character, I would say now, is way out in front. Why might that be? Why is character such an important part, an important skill for learners? If you've got some thoughts, drop them in the chat. Okay. Let me share something with you. Over the last 6 years, Joanne Quinn and I have used this particular survey hundreds of times in every different location you could think of across the globe. And in almost every single occasion, character has emerged as the most important skill, regardless of country, nationality, of language. Character has come out as the most important skill. I had someone describe that to me one day, and I can't remember. I wish I could remember the person's name, but he said, Max, character
Unisba.
is the gateway to the other 5. If we don't have character and reflection, we won't be able to effectively engage with the others. And I thought that was very powerful. Still more responses coming in there, certainly in the chat and on that website. Thank you for those responses, certainly indicating the strength and the power of character. And so one of the things that we do see in our work, when teachers design learning to help students build these global competencies, we don't say to them, what you need to do is go out and focus on all 6 all at once. Too difficult, too difficult. Rather, we'll say, choose 1 or 2 of these competencies and focus on developing those. When teachers choose character or citizenship or creativity, the other 3, collaboration, critical thinking, and communication, are sparked. So we talk about character, citizenship, and creativity as the catalytic Cs. They light the fire for learners to engage with the other competencies. Let me take this a little deeper and take you a little deeper here. Excuse me. When I had the 6 global competencies on screen and I talked about a common language, we knew that those bullet points were helpful in building that common language, but would not be enough. And so we created what we called deep learning progressions. They're descriptions of what students' knowledge and skills look like as they develop the competencies. Let me share one with you. This is the collaboration deep learning progression. You can see that at the top, and I'm going to try and use a laser pointer at the top here. We have that definition that combines the 3 or 4 bullet points in the previous slide. What we've done is break each of the competencies down into 4 or 5 different dimensions. So here you can see working interdependently as a team and interpersonal and team-related skills. And then we've broken those dimensions down into 5 different levels, from limited through to proficient, with a little arrow there so we don't stop at the end of proficient, we keep learning. And then each of these cells contains some quite rich descriptors about what we would expect learners to be able to do, what we would see them doing, saying, thinking, and being each of these stages. So these progressions are incredibly important. They allow us to do a number of things. They allow us to look at an individual student or maybe a group of students and say, where are my learners right now? Where are they? So to give you an example, I might look at my class and say, okay, I can see that my learners can do this, but they're doing a little bit of this. They're doing some of these things and they're doing some of these things. Very, very rare that it would all fall neatly down one column. It doesn't happen. Learning is not like that. But that gives me benchmark and understanding of where my students are. That then allows me as a teacher to design deep learning to move them from where they are towards proficiency. And so I'll design my deep learning with my students in mind. And then I might, for example, take a different color highlighter after we've done the learning together and say, actually, now I can see that my learners are here. And they're really consolidating some of this. And then, so over time, I can measure the growth of my learners using these progressions. Incredibly powerful tool. So there are my 3 uses, if you like, for these learning progressions. They allow me to understand where students are, inform me about how I design deep learning, and then measure growth. So you can see a close-up here of that collaboration learning progression again. As well as teachers understanding these progressions, it's critical, again, to build shared language and understanding. So we have student versions of the progressions. They've been simplified so that students can know what, in this case again, collaboration looks like. They can start to benchmark themselves and understand where they are and where they might go to next and what that might look like. So these are really powerful parts of this shared language and shared understanding that deep learning embraces. We've also created self-assessments. So students can sit and say, I can rate myself. Again, here is critical thinking. Somewhere from limited to proficient. It asks them to provide evidence, so evidence-based practices. And then also, on the right-hand side, gives them a future focus. How might I keep developing my competency, in this case, critical thinking? What are some of the things that I can continue to do? This idea of assessing and measuring deep learning, critical part of the work, finding new ways to measure deep learning. And those new ways need to embrace a number of different ways of assessing, if you like. Observations, products, conversations. Wondering if, thank you for the highlights and the blue markers, but I can't actually erase those. So I might need a host to erase those blue lines on the slide. Otherwise, they're going to stay with us for the rest of the webinar there. So let me compare and contrast traditional and deep learning. Traditional learning often very much about the transmission of knowledge. Deep learning about authentic problem solving, real world. And you saw that in that video clip from the elementary school in Michelin. It's a shift from teacher driven, and we use a phrase teacher framed, but student led. So the teacher will put the parameters in place for the learning, but allow students to personalize that and explore different ways and outcomes. It's a move away from passive students who are compliance oriented, who really engage learners with strong and powerful voice, choice, and agency. A move away from impersonal learning to learning that is meaningful and based on what students need. And a move away from that directed student work towards students who are independent, resilient, proactive. And so we talk about deep learning as being learning that sticks for life. You can see this classroom. I walked into this classroom in Salt Lake City in Utah. It was the beginning of the year, grade 4. The class together had created those posters. What does collaboration look like and sound like in this classroom? What does critical thinking or character look like, sound like, feel like for us in the classroom? And when you look at the tree in the middle, the idea was when one of the students saw one of their buddies behaving in those ways, they were allowed to take their name, put it on a leaf, and put it on the tree, hoping to flesh out that tree over the year. So deep learning, quality learning that sticks for life, built around this shared language and understanding of our competencies. I've spoken about the learning side of this work. What does the teaching side look like? Let's spend some time thinking about what does it mean to be a teacher of deep learning? So again, very early on in our work, we identified what we've called 4 elements of learning design. And I love the quote on screen from Seymour Papert. The role of the teacher is to create the condition for invention and learning rather than provide ready-made knowledge, the answers. So our 4 elements of learning design, again, give us framework for deep learning design. They give us 4 elements to focus on. And we know that when these elements are focused upon, our deep learning is richer. Let me talk you through these elements. The first is learning partnerships. So learning partnerships is all about the relationships between and among students, teachers, family, the wider community. It's about saying who else as a teacher, can I partner with to make this learning richer, more powerful, deep? How might I build voice, choice, and agency, independence into my learners and their learning? Second of the elements are learning environments, not only the physical environment, but the socio-emotional environment that allows every student to come to school to feel safe, to feel valued, to have that social and emotional support that we know is so important for successful learning. So how do we build that culture and climate within our own classrooms, within our own schools? How do we use technology for more than just the routine? How do we use technology to amplify and accelerate learners and learning? How do we ensure that technology is not just used as a means unto itself, but is in service of our learners and their learning? And then finally, what are the pedagogical practices? What are the teaching and learning strategies that we use in our classrooms? We tried to illustrate this notion of fusion in this diagram. On the left, you see some proven, powerful models of teaching: inquiry, problem-based learning, universal design, backward design, feedback, all of the things that we know when they do well, when they are done well, they are super powerful ways of instruction and of teaching and learning. But we also wanted to make a point, given the evolution of our thinking, and particularly of technology, what other practices are emerging that we might take a look at to augment what we currently do? Bear in mind, this diagram was created in 2019. And so some of the strategies on the right are perhaps not quite as emergent as they were then. The point is, how might learning co-design, computational thinking, gamification, virtual tours, augmented and mixed reality, how might, as teachers, we use those strategies to meet the needs of our learners today? And so we talk about here a fusion of proven strategies, but also that willingness to be able to go outside the box and experiment with particularly new strategies that meet the needs of learners who are very different to the way learners were 10 years ago. Take a look at, this is a very short video clip. It's about an AP statistics class, so Year 12 advanced placement statistics in a class in a school in New York City. Many teachers will say to me, Max, I wouldn't expect to see deep learning in Year 12 math. So, okay, you might not. But here's an example of how we can involve deep learning in a Year 12 math class. What do you notice again as you watch this about the partnerships, the learning environment, and the types of teaching strategies that this teacher is using? Let's take a look.
Homework out, please.
The goal in Eleanor Terry's AP Statistics class at Telecommunication Arts and Technology High School in New York City is for students to learn to be producers rather than consumers.
So I want to hear words like random number table. In most math classes, the teacher gives information and it's kind of linear. You know, I do, you do, we do, and then they're tested on it. Students feel like this is happening to me. How many polling sites are in Assembly District 41? Yeah. In the statistics class, they are going to create their own math.
We will get a large variety.
Last fall, Ms. Terry's students were debating the pros and cons of various polling techniques. But to go deeper, she had students create exit polls of their own.
We're handing out exit polls for an AP statistics.
And on election day, they gave them to voters across the city.
If you want them to learn how to do statistics, let them be statisticians. We're going to end up with thousands of exit polls, large data sets that you have to clean up, and it's going to be messy, and no one will have done that before. So that data is theirs, and whatever they discover is theirs.
November 6th, everybody has off because it's election day, but we're going out and we're learning, and like a lot of us aren't mad or disappointed that we're going to be doing something school related that day. We're happy because we're learning more.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Again, the question, feel free to use the chat. What did you notice? Learning by doing, yeah. Action, real world. Partnership. Learning together. Critical thinking, yeah. Investigation. From theory to practice, project learning, yeah, yeah. The environment was a learning resource, yes. The teacher was very open about the strategies that she was using, learning to doing by being an expert. Let the students be experts. Let them be statisticians. Yeah. Teacher as facilitator, contextual. There was collaboration and communication, yeah. So once again, those global competencies, very evident because of the engagement, context, the environment that was created purposefully by the teacher. Yeah. See it flowing through the chat there. Collaboration, critical thinking. Yeah. Teamwork. Again, we're naming up parts of every global competency here. So what we also talk about is a new role for teachers. Some of you have used this language already today. Teacher as an activator. Teacher who knows their class very well. Who can establish challenging goal and success criteria for everybody. Someone who uses different teaching strategies, pedagogical practices to meet the needs and the context. Someone who provides feedback to their learners to help their learners grow to the next level. To the next level. The teacher as a culture builder. So how does the teacher create that culture where trust is paramount so that students will take risk and innovate and be creativity and feel safe doing it? How might we co-design learning with students? How do we support resilience, perseverance, self-control, belonging, metacognition, autonomy? And then finally, the student as a collaborator, the teacher rather, as a collaborator, connecting to students, yeah, families, the broader community? How do we as teachers collaborate with our colleagues who build and share our knowledge together? I'm going to jump back on our Dreamliner. We're going to head a long way. We're going to head to Newfoundland, far eastern province of Canada. And we're going to watch a video clip that came to us in the middle of the COVID pandemic. You can imagine, and you will have experienced, the uncertainty turning up to school that first year of the pandemic. How does this work? How will this work? This is the story of choir, a vocal choir in a school in Newfoundland and Labrador, far east Canada. It tells the story of them as a group of people, but it tells the story of a teacher who's an activator, culture builder, and a collaborator. As you watch this clip, what do you notice about how the teacher was that activator of learning, that culture builder, and that collaborator? Let's take a trip to Newfoundland and Labrador and hear about the Holy Heart Choir.
This music video, I think we started this honestly probably within the second, third week of us singing, because we weren't really sure what was going on with choir for the first bit of the school year with Corona and what we were going to do with our masks and whether we could sing or could not sing, but I knew Mr. Colburn was going to figure it out. He was not going to let choir not happen.
To watch them from the first day of listening to the Inner Sisters version to going down the road of here's the music, let's take a look and let's see what it sounds like, let's try it out. And to watch that, though, all of the students kind of collaborate with me, because it's not about me standing up and saying, this is what you're doing. I don't know what's relevant, or cool, so I have to go to them to get inspiration. So when I say, well, this is something that I think it's a great idea, how about we do this? Why don't we do that? And then they start to get involved. And that's when you see students really take ownership of things, and it's no longer school. It's like, this is ours. This is something that we have.
Mr. Colburn is an incredible choir director, and he's always looking for ways to give us new opportunities and try new things. And this video is just one example of the many things we've done over the past couple years.
We started out with kind of just an idea of, let's do this song because it's written by Newfoundlanders and it's for the CBC Music Challenge. And, it kind of just, it was almost a song that meant home to us. And then it kind of grew into this bigger concept of inclusivity and, speaking for everybody who lives in Newfoundland, not just us. Speaking for the deaf community as well.
I've heard a lot of deaf people online talk about sign language interpretations of songs, mainly from hearing people, and they just do movements and actions and stuff, and a lot of it is really it's really inaccurate and appropriative. People don't know the difference, so that's what other hearing people come to learn about sign language and stuff, when it's actually a language with facial expressions and different signs for words and stuff, and a culture that deaf people own.
At a time in our lives, particularly right now with all that's happening in the world, it's caused a collective awareness on marginalized groups. and the importance of providing those groups with the support and the voice that they need. Our involvement with this project provided us with many opportunities. A pivotal piece was our philosophy of nothing about us without us. I could see in our Zoom session that was held with the deaf choir member Paula, the opening of minds. And in that moment, I bookmarked it in my mind. It was an important moment because to me, it really symbolized change was happening. And awareness is a cornerstone of change.
I want to thank Robert for having an open heart and an open mind to allow me to be involved with the Holy Heart of Mary Choir. I'm so happy that I'll be involved with them. I want to spread deaf awareness of our beautiful language of ASL and our culture. And if you include deaf people in your project, it's not cultural appropriation.
The more things that as a school we can offer these students while they're here, the more things they leave here with, and the more opportunities that they can continue to bring to other people.
These students then crave more of those experiences because they are authentic. You can't learn them out of a book. It's an inward sense of a deeper understanding of things that are happening around them, and that is something that is truly part of the educational process for us.
It meant something to the deaf community. Every little movement, it mattered. We had to edit it a few times, change what we were doing because we realized it was wrong. And so it was all a learning experience for everybody, including Mr. Colburn, and I'm really grateful for it. I have to say, it's not something I'll ever forget.
By participating in choir here at Holy Heart, I think you're able to find a sense of community, you're able to relate to other people, and you're able to make something beautiful together.
As a music teacher, I want to be able to give my students as many experiences as they can have. It feels great that at the end of the day, they're going to walk away from this experience and say, remember when we were in high school and we made a music video? And do you remember when we were doing the video and we actually got to communicate and to collaborate with the deaf community at a time when lights were being shone on the deaf community, that we were part of that. And it's a wonderful experience to witness your students growing and enjoying something, and then it evolving into something that can exceed your first ideas.
The world has changed. The world is about critical thinking. Can you adapt to the situation you're presented with without knowing what situation you're going to be encountering? And that is a core competency of deep learning, is the critical thinking piece. So thinking bigger, thinking inclusionary, thinking collaboration, it's very important, and they're skills that will take you anywhere, no matter what the situation you encounter when you leave high school.
Well, as you listened to the teacher, what were some of his characteristics? How did he activate learning? How did he build culture and collaboration? Again, I'd invite you to share your thoughts in the chat. Teacher capacity to motivate and engage through teacher. Teacher set the culture of learning. Yeah. Consultative. Listen to the students. Allowed students to take ownership. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes that's very difficult. Sometimes that's really difficult for us as teachers. Room to think critically, collaborate. He's a designer of learning. No one left behind, facilitating. Authentic, again, agency, yeah. intentional too. It was highly intentional. And so we come then to this idea of designing deep learning. How might we design deep learning? Important quote on your screen there. There is no one way to do this. There is no one way to design deep learning. We have built a whole raft of resources that will help teachers design deep learning for their contexts. And we have identified some areas that are critical to focus on. Let me talk you through those. This is our learning design planning template. It's a performer that we have to help guide teachers design deep learning, not to replace the templates that schools and teachers currently have, but to sit alongside and help with the design of deep learning. We'll zoom in a little here. So at the top, let's start with assessing what we already know. What are my students' strengths? What are their needs? What are their interests? Then let's think about outcomes, both curriculum standards and global competencies. Again, not choosing all 6 of the competencies, but 1 or maybe 2 or several of the dimensions to drill down and focus on. What will success look like for these students? What will it look like if they're successful? Let's ask teachers to be clear about that. Then we move to the design phase. Let's provide that overview of some of the activities that the students will participate in. And let's consider each of the 4 elements. What are the strategies? What are the teaching strategies I will use? What partnerships might I bring together to support the learning? What will the learning environment look like? Physically, socio-emotionally. And then how will I use technology to amplify, accelerate, and connect learners and learning? And as we move down that template, there's a purple section there for a teacher to jot notes as they implement. Reminders, thoughts, improvements. And then that section around how will we assess this learning? Formatively and summatively. There's a prompt there about understanding whether the learning design met the objectives. Did what I designed actually happen? And then reflecting on that learning design. What might I change for next time? What worked well? What could I improve? So that's our learning design template. We also provide teachers with what we call cues and prompts around each of those 4 elements. So things to look for, helping us again to build that common language, to take the mystery out of learning design. Very much based on Grant Wiggins and McTighe. You may be familiar with their understanding by design framework. Let's start with the end in mind, understand what that success looks like, and then continue with our planning. And so on the left, the cues and prompts help teachers to think about those 4 elements and the way that they design to include those in their learning. We have a rubric that allows teachers, again, to evaluate how powerfully they've incorporated each of the 4 elements. So you can see learning partnerships, learning environments, descriptors from limited to advanced, and some of the characteristics of each of those elements. again, for pedagogical practices and leveraging digital. And so teachers may look at their design and then reference this rubric and say, okay, I can see that perhaps I'm doing some of these things, a couple of these things, and maybe a little of this. But if I focused here, I might shift the strength of my design from limited towards advanced. So again, these reflective tools, highly purposeful in implementing, accelerating, and designing deep learning. And so from our work over the long period of time, some characteristics of powerful learning experiences that help learners develop the global competencies are all about higher order cognitive thinking to develop understanding of both content and curriculum and issues in our contemporary world. They're often cross-disciplinary. They focus on the academic and the development of personal competencies. As you've seen today, they're active, authentic, challenging, student-centered, often designed to impact the world and take place in a wide range of settings. So I'm drawing close to the end of my presentation here. Let's take a look at one more element. The conditions that support deep learning. You can see our model on the right here. Global competencies, the 6 C's at the center. Supported by that precision of the 4 elements of learning design. And then there are some conditions that we've identified that wrap around the outside to support this work. Let's take a brief look at those. 5 conditions that support deep learning. Vision and goals, clarity of those vision and goals, the power of the leadership within the school, the collaborative culture, deep learning itself, and then how we measure and evaluate. And so, not surprisingly, we have a rubric that helps schools and networks understand where they sit in terms of their successful support and implementation of deep learning. You can see again, if we look at vision and goals, we might look at ourselves and say there are really no plans in place here to support deep learning. The other end of that scale is a well-articulated strategy with focused goals owned by all members of the community and used to drive decision-making. Schools take this rubric and they position themselves somewhere on the rubric. And that's not a formal evaluation. That is actually all about understanding where they are in order to move beyond where they are and move towards that advanced layer. So our school conditions rubric. 3 questions we continually ask. Let me advance to that next slide, and I think my highlighter may be stuck on. Let's try this. Where are we now? What's our evidence for that? And what does that mean for our next steps? So you can see in the bottom left-hand corner here, schools will often take that rubric and use sticky notes. So, well, we think we're here, and here's our evidence, and this is where we want to go to next. So a significant suite of tools available at teacher level, at school level, at student level for the development of this work. Where to next? Let me go back to my phases of implementation here. Today, all about that strategic design. Moving towards clarity, building that common language. As you come together to discuss this work, one of the models that we know and has worked for us for over 10 years now, it's to focus on that first page, clarity. I mentioned earlier that we generally bring people together for a 2-day institute. In those 2 days, we take the last 90 minutes or so and we expand it out. We go much more slowly. We have lots of conversations about building our shared understanding. We plan for our implementation and our moving forward. And then we'll often say to schools or networks again, over the next, we want you to go back into your classrooms and try this out. Make this happen in your classrooms and come back and tell us how that went. Let's share what happened. And so we come back generally for three single days of follow-up. And those days, we introduce some more tools. We reflect on our practice. We learn from each other. We design and we redesign. And so our model of support has looked something like this in year one for many of our networks. It's about learning together. It's about building the shared language. It's about gradually embracing more and more of these tools. We certainly don't provide all of the tools all at once because there are too many. They are overwhelming. So it's very carefully planned, build, and you can see a book in the middle there, Dive into Deep Learning. Depth people through this process of learning and this first phase of capacity building. I'm about to share with you a link that will take you to a number of documents. One of them may be useful is this implementation diagnostic that provides some questions, some prompts about your initial engagement in deep learning. Happy to share that, and I'll share the link to that in just a moment. So our deep learning model, just before I finish. Clarity of learning goals, building the global competencies. Supported by precision in pedagogy via the 4 elements of learning design. Supportive school conditions and doing this work with others. Building the shared language and understanding. That's the model that we use. I hope that this has been useful in building some understanding. The link on screen, QR code, I will share this presentation. So there is a copy of this presentation in the Google Drive there. There is also that implementation guide, and there is also a getting started guide that tells you a little bit about this work, a little bit about where we might go next. I'm just going to copy that link for you and throw it into the chat box. Bear with me here. So in the chat box is the link to the Google Drive. And I would love now just to take some questions, have some conversations if there are questions. Very, very happy. There were some wonderful questions in the chat box that I hope somebody might have recorded. I think I snapshotted a couple. There was a question about competencies and national examinations. That comes up In every context, every country has high stakes exams that we address. What we are learning more and more is that students who have developed the global competency have the critical thinking and communication skills, the self-awareness and autonomy to understand these high stakes questions and to respond to them with acuity and accuracy. Deep learning augments their abilities to engage in these high stakes high stakes tests that come out of every country in the world. Let me pause. Any other questions that you would like to either, I'm not sure whether you can flick your microphone on or throw them in the text chat. How can we go beyond surface level understanding with the skills and strategies to design thought-provoking questions? Yeah. That is part of the design work that we dig into with our deep learning. So we spend a lot of time thinking about the types of issues that will engage children. And it's about also listening to those, being brave enough as teachers sometimes to listen to our students, to understand who they are and what they need. Yeah. Test assessment, is it still relevant to deep learning? It's relevant as long as countries such as Australia, Indonesia, and the USA still have high stakes testing to enter into post-secondary education. It has some relevance. However, let me quote a statistic in Australia. Admission to university at the end of year 12 is now done 67% not on their end of year 12 test score. So 67% of university admissions are now through other means than test scores, which includes portfolios, interviews, the ability of students to communicate, to think, to share, and to demonstrate who they are. Question about deep learning in early childhood education. I have a wealth of videos. Every learner can be a deep learner. It just looks a little different in those contexts.
Well, Mr. Max, we open for the question from the audience.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Max and team, for giving such an informative and comprehensive presentation, especially for new pedagogies for deep learning. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the key time for a discussion session for the first part. Actually, we are so glad to receive many questions from the participant, and due to time limitation, so we are going to select 3 or 2 most voted questions for our speakers in Zoom chat first, yeah. And now I need the help from the teams to see the question from the participant. Please, team brings the question on the screen.
And
Okay.
I'm hoping that you can save the text chat. If you forward that to me, I will try and answer most of the questions that have been posed there. I'll do some written answers for them in the next few days.
Yes, we can do that.
Yes. Actually, now you can see on the screen, Mr. Max. Actually, we have 4 selected question. Here, the first from Nuriani. This is educational practitioners, and the questions is how I can facilitate the classroom and foster students' creativity, imagination, and also life skills. And then The second question about how does deep learning address unique challenges and different culture and linguistics contexts, such as those in Indonesia compared to application. And then
Okay,
the third one is about what kind of learning can make children know and realize the important education and technology as a concept that must be studied and not a concept. And the last one, how can deep learning be used to create more personalized language learning experience for Indonesian learners? And then you may collaborate each of questions in one in a one explanation, or because we will have a raise hands question from the participant after this.
Where are I can't see where those questions are.
Yep.
The question is in the share screen, Max. Can you
Yes,
see the
on the
share screen?
screen. On the screen.
Okay, I'm only seeing my screen. Should I stop sharing my screen?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Can you please stop your share screen?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, now I can. Fantastic. Perfect.
Okay.
That's
You may
much
stop
easier.
your share screen first, and then you can see the screen about the questions.
Got it.
The
Yes.
participant.
Okay.
Now, can you see?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. Actually, we have 4 questions here from
So I
Zoom
guess
chat. Yep.
I guess the first and the fourth are a little similar.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? What at the core of those two questions is knowing and understanding who our students are, knowing what they need, what they enjoy, what engages them. If students are engaged, then their creativity and imagination will flourish. And we as teachers and activators can help build their life skills if we focus on things like character and citizenship, directly related to life skills. In the same way, when you're asking about a more personalized language experience, we need to create that learning experience with authenticity. If it's not connected to who learners are and what they need, then it will remain less relevant. Students will see this as something else that the teacher is making me do, not something that I need. And so I guess the second question there about unique challenges in culture and linguistic content. So over our 20 countries, many of our resources have been translated so that they are appropriate. A unique example in Uruguay with their version of Spanish that they use, they said to me, Max, some of the documents don't make any sense if we do a literal translation. So I said, please make those documents make sense. Take them. And so we have translations into Dutch, into Spanish, into Portuguese. We have a number of different translations available. It has to make sense in every country's context, And then the question around technology. Technology now is so ubiquitous. It is everywhere. So it's not, whilst there are some specialist technology applications and areas, it's all about being conscious of using technology to amplify learning, to make learning more efficient, more effective, to make learning connected and collaborative, to be able to reach out to others in different contexts and understand their worlds. There is a key use of technology that we can become global citizens so much more easily now than we could even 10 years ago because of the way the Zoom technology, because of the way we can connect and
Ini
communicate,
banyak loh ya Reza,
learn,
pilih yang mana?
build empathy. It's a significant utilization of technology in our service, not us being in the service of technology. Hope those answers may have helped.
Miss Ima, you are still muted.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
There's a question there around the difference between deep learning and differentiated instruction. Deep learning has a specific focus on building the competencies. Certainly, differentiation is one of the strategies that we can use to create deep learning environments. But deep learning, by definition, must have that explicit focus on developing one or more of our global competencies. And so many people will say, is deep learning project-based learning or inquiry-based learning? And we would say it can be, but we can also have project-based learning, inquiry-based learning that is not deep learning because it's not embracing and focusing on the global competencies. That's the differentiator between our deep learning model and many of the other models that are out there that are still very good and good ways of learning, are strategies and practices that we can embrace.
Well, that was very detailed answer from the Max. And of course, excellent point from Max about the participants' questions. Hopefully, you got the points from Max in terms of your questions. Now, we open for a raised hand. Okay, for Pak Erwin Junaidi.
Okay. Ibu Siti, can you listen my voice?
Yes, your voice is clear. Clear.
Yeah. Mr. Max, thank you very much for your clear explanation. Well,
sorry, Mr. Erwin.
yeah.
Could you tell us about your affiliation?
Oh yeah. I'm Erwin Junaidi. I am the teacher in SMP Negeri 25 Bandar Lampung, Mr.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Mike, are you a teacher too?
Yes, I was a teacher. I was a teacher. I was a school principal.
Okay,
I was a school leader. I worked at all levels of a system. Yes.
Thanks. Okay. Before I address my probably question, or maybe not question, probably it is telling about my opinion, maybe, yeah. When your school got a holiday, did your student call you, Mr. Mike? I love you, Mr. Mike. Okay, I miss you so much, or not?
So I taught at many different schools.
Yeah. Okay.
Many different year levels.
Some of them. Okay.
Some of them would be yes. And in fact, the other day,
okay,
I met a student who is now 35. I taught him when he was 13.
Wow.
I haven't seen him for that long. And he said, you know what the difference was? I said, what? He said, you were kind and you cared. And I haven't seen that student for over 25 years. And he remembered me, and those were his words. And I was touched.
Wow. It was very amazing. Okay. It's a very productive with what I was happening in my habit. as long as our school holiday, no student call me, Mr. Erwin, I miss you. I miss your class. So uh, in case of this, when we're talking about deep learning is such an approach in my mind, probably, yeah, Mr. Mike, yeah. And we want our student know well about why they learn the subject and what this impact of this material to them to their daily life. Okay, and I think as a teacher, we will get to very big difficulty to apply this kind of approach, okay, when we as a teacher also is not loved by our student. It means that student dislike us because probably they feel our learning or methods very boring or such kind of that. And
Excuse me, Mr. Edwin.
my question to you is to apply.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Mr.
I'm
Edwin. Could you simply make your question in one?
okay now. I'm going directly come to my question. I think how we can to apply this approach. Okay. Meanwhile, okay, so far in Indonesian custom, teacher is everything. Teacher is a powerful. Teacher is knowing everything. When while in our school, we still suppose that the student is an object, not a subject. So how we can apply it? That's please
So for
help me.
Not just in Indonesian systems.
Yeah.
The model of education globally is that the teacher knows everything and the student is coming to school to be taught. That is the industrial model of education since the 1700s. No wonder students don't like teachers sometimes, because they now have their own ways of thinking. They have their own networks. They have their own interests. So teachers have to unlearn some of the things that their systems have been demanding them to be for so long. And so it takes support from a school and a system. It takes permission from the head principal to say, I want you to have positive relationships with students, to understand them, to listen to them, and to treat them as human beings. It's a big shift, and it is sometimes difficult, but that's the shift that we have to make to allow this to happen.
Okay. What about the explanation, Mr. Erwin? Is it acceptable? Yes. Oh, is it clear?
Yes.
Clear.
Yeah,
Okay.
very
Thank you.
clear.
Thank
Yeah,
you very much.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Erwin, for the question, and Mr. Max for the answer. Now we continue for the second raise hands participant, please, from UIMI, Muhammad Fatur. You may open your microphones.
Okay, can you hear my voice?
Yeah.
Okay, before I'm really sorry. I can't on cam because my laptop doesn't have built-in camera. So I'm really sorry.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, I will jump into my question. In Indonesia, Minister of Education plan to implement deep learning, and in his concept of deep learning, there are three elements, which is mindful learning, meaningful learning, and joyful learning. So, your point of view, Max, how it relates to the material you just explained to us. Thank you.
So that was mindful learning, joyful learning, and what was the third one?
Meaningful learning.
Meaningful. Fantastic. So deep learning is about all of those things. When prime ministers or education ministers use that big language, often what they fail to do is tell you how you might go about that. none of us would argue with meaningful learning, joyful learning, mindful learning. Deep learning and our model of deep learning gives us a way to make that happen. Gives us a way to ensure that it will happen, rather than just be some language on a nice poster somewhere. Yeah. So I would agree totally with those three. And I would say our deep learning model is the way to make that happen.
Well, what about the detailed answer, Pak Fatur?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. For the last question from the race and participant, please, Ibu Siva.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Shiva. I'm from Universitas International, Universitas Islam International Indonesia, or we can say UIII. Actually, I'm going to conduct a workshop on lesson planning for Islamic boarding school teachers, and I plan to share about this deep learning. However, I find it a bit challenging because in pesantren or Islamic boarding school, there are subjects that require memorization. And the things now happen is still many indoctrination in the pesantren or Islamic boarding school. How should I teach this to the teachers, and where do I have to start? Because we need to change their mindset that actually even Western method like deep learning can also be applied in pesantren or Islamic boarding school. Thank you very much.
I think when you are going into a context like what you describe, we have to present options. And so it's not going in to say you must stop all of this, but it's an option of using perhaps some video clips and saying, is this a possibility? Much as we started today, what do you notice about this? What excites you about this? What possibilities might be available to us? And so it's starting in a very gentle way, introducing the concepts and trying first to win the hearts and minds. And so this is why our work is, we at the very least for schools and networks, 3 years, because it takes time and we don't always get everybody the first time. In fact, we usually start with a very small group of teachers, who are willing and ready and brave to step out of the comfort zone. And we work with them very closely. And then they open their classroom doors and show the others what's going on. And they hear the learning from the other teachers. And so it's an organic but highly strategic way of implementing this work. My advice would be start small and grow the work slowly. We use a phrase, go slow to go fast. You will eventually build momentum, like that big rolling boulder. It will build momentum, but it takes time and it takes some really clear thinking and implementation strategies. Yeah.
Okay, well, Ibu Siva.
Thank you very much, Max. Thank you very
Pleasure.
much.
Yes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, actually we still have another question or topic to be discussed as we see them on chat WhatsApp group. However, due to the limited times, so we need to end our first discussion with Max because we have the second speakers. And of course, some selected remaining questions will still be addressed via WhatsApp groups. And now, shall we continue? Before that, thank you very much for the audience and also for Mr. Max for your nice presentation about new pedagogies for deep learnings. And we continue for the second second speakers, Pak Yanuar. Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, are you ready to present your material?
Yes, Ibu Siti Rahma. By the way, before I start my presentation, thank you very
Okay.
much, Max, for a very detailed explanation about what is deep learning and why is it important and how we can try to implement a deep learning. So, Max, thank you very much. We would like to follow up after the discussions here. And as you mentioned that we are going to collect all the comments in the box chat and also in the YouTube comments. And later we are going to send it to you so you can go through. We have also the recording for these events. So I think we are going to learn a lot from these events and do the reflections after the events. So Max, if you have another activities to be done before leaving these Zoom meetings, we would like to ask you to provide a closing statements. So what is the most important takeaways that we need to take from your sessions today, Max?
I think you know what's important is that we start this work with people who are willing to engage. We talk about the coalition of the willing. When people begin this work, there are a number of different options. There is the deep learning, the dive into deep learning book that I mentioned, that I think you have a copy of there. Not very good on screen. That is useful. But the most powerful way of beginning this work is to engage, to sit, to talk, and to plan out some professional learning for teachers, often led by myself or one of our team, because the years of experience that we have and what we've seen can certainly lead to a much more rapid implementation. So I'm happy to talk about opportunities or options there. Start slowly and build the shared common language, I think would be the most important part around the 6 competencies and the 4 elements of learning design. And I wish you, I'm very happy to communicate with anyone that would like to after the webinar. Thank you for your time, for your enthusiasm, for your responses. I've really enjoyed meeting you, and I hope that we may meet in person sometime. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Max,
Thank you
for your
very
time
much,
and everything
Mr.
that
Max.
you have already shared with us. I have managed to have your 2 books, and we are still working here in Universitas Lampung to really understand and study it in deep and then try to implement it. And you know, Max, here in Universitas Lampung, we have a community of Deep Learning Indonesia in which what you say, start small, start slow to go deep. So the way that we conducted this webinar is the way that we implement deep learning, because we ourselves is also developing our character, our creativity in setting up this webinar. So thank you very much, Max, for your sessions. It's a very pleasure to meet you and discuss with you today. Thank you, Max.
Thank you all.
Very much, Mr. Max. Catch you next meeting.
Will do. Bye. Thank you all.
Yes. Okay, Pak Yanwar. Do you want to share your material in English or in Indonesia?
Okay, so baik. Terima kasih Bu Rahma. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Selamat siang Bapak Ibu semuanya, and I'm very happy to have this kind of opportunity that we meet in this webinar. However, let me do the presentation in Bahasa Indonesia. Just wait a second. So, my sessions, this webinar ini adalah tentang deep learning. Apa, mengapa, dan bagaimana deep learning di Indonesia and international. Bapak Ibu, tadi sudah disampaikan oleh Max bagaimana sih sebenarnya konsep dan implementasi deep learning dari sumbernya. Itu kenapa saya selalu sampaikan kepada Bapak Ibu, untuk belajar deep learning maka kita harus tahu dari sumber aslinya. Oleh sebab itu kami mengundang Bapak Ibu ke depan untuk juga bersama-sama. Tidak harus melalui webinar-webinar yang besar, tetapi Bapak Ibu akan menjadi penggerak di kelas-kelas Bapak Ibu, di tempat-tempat Bapak Ibu. So, Bapak Ibu, saya akan memulai presentasi saya dengan summary dan rekomendasi. Ini sangat penting saya sampaikan karena nanti seperti yang disampaikan oleh Max, start slow to go fast. Artinya, saya ingin merekomendasikan yang pertama kepada kita semua dan juga kepada pemerintah, ojo kesusu, jangan terburu-buru. Bukan berarti ganti menteri langsung tancap gas ganti metode dan pendekatan pembelajaran, karena saya yakin yang dilakukan oleh Bapak Ibu di kelas masing-masing adalah yang terbaik menurut versi Bapak Ibu masing-masing. Dan deep learning tidak mengharuskan satu single way or strategy to achieve those 6 global competencies. Sehingga saran saya kepada Bapak Ibu dan juga pemerintah adalah jangan kesusu. Belajarlah deep learning, dipahami secara mendalam dulu. Di dalam dunia pendidikan, kita bukan seperti berlomba di dalam dunia bisnis. Jalani, nanti perbaiki sambil jalan. Tidak bisa Bapak Ibu, karena pendidikan adalah berkaitan dengan karakter seseorang dan apa yang akan kita bentuk untuk generasi Indonesia ke depan. So, saya memulai dengan rekomendasi, if the teachers and leaders are not thinking deeply. Artinya, kalau Bapak Ibu, dosen, pengajar, guru, mahasiswa, termasuk pemerintah yang mendesain deep learning atau pembelajaran mendalam untuk Indonesia, tidak mempelajari pembelajaran mendalam ini secara serius dan mendalam, maka jangan harap kita bisa menciptakan pembelajaran mendalam yang mentransformasi Indonesia. Bapak Ibu, Indonesia dengan sistem pendidikan terbesar keempat di dunia tentunya sangat berbeda dengan negara-negara kecil yang bisa bertransformasi dengan sangat cepat. Sehingga harapan saya Bapak Ibu, ayo kita sama-sama menjadikan deep learning ini bukan hanya sebagai kebijakan pemerintah, tetapi bagaimana deep learning ini menjadi gerakan kita bersama untuk terus maju, untuk terus belajar. Sehingga saran saya, lakukan deep learning mulai dari diri kita sendiri, dari lingkungan terdekat kita. Yuk kita belajar tentang deep learning. Deep learning through deep learning. Ini yang sudah kami implementasikan Bapak Ibu di komunitas Deep Learning Indonesia di Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan Universitas Lampung. Kami punya komunitas teman-teman dosen yang berkomitmen untuk mempelajari deep learning secara mendalam, kemudian merencanakan implementasinya. Kami ingin Bapak Ibu semua dan juga pemerintah untuk melakukan circle dari deep learning. Jangan begitu ganti menteri langsung kebijakannya ganti, padahal yang dulu belum sempat dievaluasi bagaimana ketercapaian dan pelaksanaannya. Sehingga langkah pertama adalah Bapak Ibu mengakses dulu bagaimana kondisi kekuatan kita sebagai individu, sebagai guru, sebagai praktisi atau aktor dalam dunia pendidikan. Setelah kita tahu apa dan bagaimana kondisi kita saat ini, berdasarkan itulah maka kita mendesain sesuatu yang baru untuk dilakukan perubahan yang lebih baik. Kemudian setelah mendesain bersama-sama, kita coba mengimplementasikannya. Tidak hanya di kelas kita, tapi bagaimana kita sebagai individu menjadi deep learners ourselves. Karena semuanya bermula dari kita. Jangan kita hanya meminta siswa kita untuk menjadi deep learner, belajar secara mendalam, tetapi kita sendiri sebagai dosen, sebagai guru, sebagai pengajar tidak pernah mengimplementasikan deep learning. Sehingga pesan saya yang pertama, dan ini pesan terbesarnya adalah go slow to go fast. Jangan kesusu, jangan terburu-buru. Sehingga itu yang menjadi pesan saya. Bapak Ibu, sebelum kita lanjutkan, mungkin ini tidak usah. Tadinya saya desain supaya kita bisa berkenalan, tetapi dengan Max, Bapak Ibu sudah banyak sekali berinteraksi. Nah, Bapak Ibu, pertanyaan kedua, apa yang Bapak Ibu ingin pelajari lebih mendalam tentang deep learning? Tadi sudah di internasional konteks, harapannya di sesi saya bisa menjembatani antara bagaimana deep learning di internasional dan bagaimana potensi implementasinya nanti di Indonesia. Bapak Ibu tentu sudah melihat kajian akademik yang dikeluarkan oleh Pusat Kurikulum dan Pembelajaran Kemendikbudristek. Mari kita sama-sama pelajari dan lihat bagaimana konsep deep learning yang digagas oleh pemerintah. Ada improvement, ada adjustment dari konsep deep learning yang disampaikan oleh Max, di mana fokusnya adalah untuk mencapai 6 global competencies, 6 kompetensi global yang tadi termasuk karakter, citizenship, dan sebagainya. Tetapi di Indonesia, kemudian dari kajian akademik, kita melihat ada 8 profil lulusan yang sudah didesain oleh Kemendikbudristek. Nah, Bapak Ibu, di akhir sesi saya, harapannya Bapak Ibu akan mampu menjelaskan definisi dan konsep deep learning atau pembelajaran mendalam dalam konteks internasional dan Indonesia. Untuk mencapai tujuan itu, maka hari ini kita akan membahas 4 tema atau topik, apa itu deep learning yang disampaikan oleh Max NPDL, deep learning atau pembelajaran mendalam yang didesain oleh Pusat Kurikulum dan Pembelajaran melalui dokumen yang sudah disampaikan, dan keempat, bagaimana tindak lanjutnya. Apa yang seharusnya kita lakukan untuk mengimplementasikan deep learning sebagai seorang yang menjadi deep learner. Bapak Ibu, salah satu tantangan terbesar dari implementasi deep learning adalah penggunaan konsep deep learning di berbagai bidang yang berbeda. Tentu pertama kali ketika kita mendengar Pak Menteri menyampaikan nanti pembelajaran di Indonesia akan menggunakan deep learning. Tentu Bapak Ibu yang curious akan melihat deep learning di internet atau sumber-sumber yang lain. Dari yang saya telusuri, konsep deep learning itu ada 3 penggunaannya dalam satu bidang machine learning dan artificial intelligence. Yang kedua, deep learning konsep yang disampaikan oleh Max dalam New Pedagogies for Deep Learning. Dan yang ketiga, ini deep learning yang spesial Indonesia, di mana deep learning diarahkan melalui proses pembelajaran yang berkesadaran, bermakna, dan menyenangkan atau menggembirakan. Mindful, meaningful, and joyful learning. Apa bedanya Bapak Ibu? Deep learning yang di bidang komputer dan AI adalah pembelajaran mendalam dalam bidang ini mengacu pada upaya untuk mengembangkan kecerdasan buatan dengan memungkinkan mesin untuk belajar dari pengalaman. Sehingga ini adalah program AI bagaimana mesin itu bisa belajar dari pengalaman dia berinteraksi dengan berbagai input yang diberikan. Kita tidak akan membahas deep learning dalam kaitannya dengan bidang ini. Yang kedua, deep learning yang di NPDL adalah pembelajaran mendalam adalah proses memperoleh 6 kompetensi global, yaitu karakter, kewarganegaraan, kolaborasi, komunikasi, kreativitas, dan pemikiran kritis. Bapak Ibu, nanti coba akan kita bandingkan antara deep learning yang di NPDL, konsep dari 6 Global Competencies-nya dengan profil lulusan yang ada di Indonesia. Dulu profil lulusan itu adalah profil pelajar Pancasila dengan 6 dimensinya. Sekarang, tanpa kita tahu arah dan sebabnya, belum ada penjelasan landasan filosofis kenapa itu harus berubah. Kenapa profil pelajar Pancasila harus berubah menjadi profil lulusan? Dan bagaimana sebenarnya ketercapaian kurikulum 13 dengan profil pelajar Pancasilanya? Maka salah satu rekomendasi saya adalah jangan kesusu. Dievaluasi dulu bagaimana kurikulum 2003 kurikulum Merdeka berjalan, bagaimana profil pelajar Pancasila diimplementasikan oleh guru, dan bagaimana pencapaiannya sebelum tiba-tiba menambahkan sesuatu yang baru. Deep learning ya di dalam versi full adalah pendekatan yang memuliakan dengan menekankan pada penciptaan suasana belajar dan proses pembelajaran berkesadaran, mindful, bermakna, meaningful, dan menggembirakan melalui olah pikir, olah hati, olah rasa, dan olahraga. Bapak Ibu, kalau kita bandingkan kedua definisi dari deep learning, yang satu di atas fokus pada pencapaian luarannya, global competencies. Sedangkan yang full versi Indonesia lebih berfokus pada penciptaan suasana belajar dan proses pembelajarannya. Jadi suasana dan prosesnya. Walaupun sebenarnya juga ada tujuan untuk mencapai profil lulusan yang 8 telah kita kembangkan. Tetapi dari definisinya tentunya kita bisa melihat sense-nya agak berbeda. Kalau yang NPDL langsung fokus kepada luarannya. Dia tidak, kalau di salah satu quote-nya, precision without prescriptions. Ketepatan tanpa adanya panduan yang jelas. Makanya Max tadi menyampaikan tidak ada satu strategi khusus yang fits for all. Artinya Bapak Ibu, deep learning itu membuat siswa belajar untuk mengembangkan 6 kompetensi global. Caranya saya yakin Bapak Ibu yang lebih memahami bagaimana karakter siswanya, bagaimana fasilitas dan infrastruktur yang ada di kelas Bapak Ibu, bagaimana kondisi sosial ekonominya. Sehingga yang atas fokus pada luaran, caranya ada panduan tetapi diserahkan kepada Bapak Ibu dosen, guru, dan pendidik. Yang full saya melihat dari definisi yang ada di kajian akademik lebih fokus pada caranya untuk mencapai luarannya. Jadi agak sedikit berbeda Bapak Ibu. Sehingga Bapak Ibu nanti kalau mencari referensi tentang deep learning, sebaiknya yang tentang AI, komputer itu tidak ada kaitannya dengan deep learning yang kita bahas. Sehingga fokus pada deep learning yang new pedagogies for deep learning dan deep learning atau pembelajaran mendalam yang didesain oleh pemerintah. Nah, bagaimana deep learning yang dari NPDL? Ada 2 buku, Bapak Ibu, yang ini menjadi panduan utama. Bapak Ibu, kalau mau belajar, itu harus mau belajar dari sumbernya. Jangan hanya belajar dari katanya, dari narasumber. Karena apa yang saya sampaikan saat ini bukan dari Max, tetapi pemahaman saya terhadap buku-buku panduan ini. Sehingga tentu sudah ada distorsi antara apa yang disampaikan di dalam sumber aslinya dengan apa yang disampaikan. Sehingga Bapak Ibu saya selalu mendorong teman-teman semua, ayo belajar langsung dari sumbernya. Nah, di dalam kerangka belajar atau kerangka berpikir deep learning yang disampaikan oleh Max, ada 4 lapisan. Nanti kita akan bandingkan dengan konsep pembelajaran mendalam yang disampaikan oleh pemerintah Indonesia melalui Pusat Kurikulum dan Pembelajaran. Lapisan pertama yang menjadi core-nya adalah deep learning global competencies. Lapisan yang kedua, bagaimana learning design itu dibuat atau dibentuk. Lapisan ketiga, analisis terhadap conditions. Karena tentunya sekolah di Bandar Lampung dengan sekolah di Kalimantan Timur, kondisi sosial ekonomiknya, kondisi distriknya, kondisi sistem dan kepemimpinannya tentu berbeda. Maka Max tadi menyampaikan untuk dianalisis bagaimana kekuatan, keunikan, dan kondisi yang ada di daerah kita masing-masing. lapisan terakhir adalah kolaboratif inquiry. Bagaimana para pengambil kebijakan, para pendidik, para trainer, dan para guru berkolaborasi untuk mana nih yang akan menjadi fokus. Karena deep learning ini Bapak Ibu, kalau kita bahas materinya banyak sekali. Dan Bapak Ibu tidak mungkin secepat kilat memahami semua materi tentang deep learning. Maka saran saya Bapak Ibu yuk bentuk komunitas, bentuk gerakan di mana Bapak Ibu berkomitmen untuk mempelajari dan mengimplementasikan deep learning ini serta menjadikan lingkungan kita sebagai kolaboratif inquiry, pertanyaan-pertanyaan yang kita address bersama. Nah, tadi juga sudah disampaikan fokus dari NPDL atau Deep Learning International itu ada 6 kompetensi. Tadi sudah sangat jelas sekali. Ini yang membedakan Bapak Ibu dengan kompetensi abad 21 yang selama ini kita kenal. Kita sudah mengenal forces. Tapi kalau ditanya, Bapak Ibu, seseorang yang memiliki communication skills yang baik itu yang seperti apa sih? Dan bagaimana progresnya? Apa yang menjadi penciri communication skills yang tidak baik? Apa yang menjadi penciri communication skills yang sudah unggul atau proficient? Maka akan banyak sekali gambaran itu. Sehingga yang pertama harus kita pahami, begitu juga nanti yang di Deep Learning Indonesia atau pembelajaran mendalam, adalah profil lulusan dan global competencies yang ingin dicapai. Sehingga kita memiliki persepsi yang sama, pendidikan kita itu mempersiapkan manusia yang punya global competencies yang proficient, yang mampu mampu mencapai profil lulusan yang sudah ditetapkan oleh pendidikan di Indonesia. Sehingga nanti di webinar ke depan Bapak Ibu komunitas kami rencananya akan membedah secara mendalam apa itu six global competencies dan bagaimana kita bisa melihat perkembangannya, mendesain pembelajaran yang memfokuskan pada salah satu atau dua kompetensi yang ada. Karena tidak mungkin kita sekali go, mohon izin untuk tidak coret-coret ya Bapak Ibu, Bu Meli Gustina, apakah panitia bisa di-erase ininya? Nah, kita akan fokus kepada bagaimana kita bisa memahami global competencies, mendesain pembelajaran yang addressing ke sana, mengimplementasikannya, lalu bagaimana kita bisa mengevaluasi, melakukan refleksi apakah yang kita lakukan sudah mampu meningkatkan global competencies yang ada bagi mahasiswa atau siswa. Mohon izin karena kami di perguruan tinggi sehingga otomatis menyebutnya adalah mahasiswa. Ini yang disampaikan oleh Max, Bapak Ibu. Mari kita pelajari bagaimana sih seseorang yang memiliki kompetensi kolaborasi yang bagus. Ini kami sudah mencoba untuk menerjemahkan Six Global Competencies and Student-Friendly Global Competencies ke dalam bahasa Indonesia. Dan Bapak Ibu, ketika kami membaca dan coba merefleksikan sejauh mana sih kompetensi saya, dari 6 global competencies, saya membaca semua progressionnya, perkembangannya, ternyata masih banyak kompetensi yang saya tidak sampai bahkan pada level accelerating. Melakukan refleksi secara jujur, saya tuh sebenarnya sudah sampai mana. Nah itu yang ke depan mudah-mudahan kami komunitas Deep Learning Indonesia bisa belajar bersama dengan Bapak Ibu semuanya. Sekarang kita akan coba pahami pembelajaran mendalam yang ada di dalam dokumen yang dikeluarkan oleh Puskurjar, Pusat Kurikulum dan Pembelajaran. Pembelajaran mendalam merupakan pembelajaran atau pendekatan yang memuliakan dengan menekankan pada penciptaan suasana belajar dan proses pembelajaran berkesadaran. Jadi, seperti yang saya sampaikan Bapak Ibu, kalau dari definisinya, fokusnya adalah dengan menciptakan atau penciptaan suasana belajar dan proses belajar. Sehingga fokusnya pada apa yang kita lakukan dalam proses pembelajaran, bukan pada hasil belajarnya. Dari konsep yang kita dapatkan, pembelajaran mendalam terdiri dari 3 komponen utama. Berkesadaran atau mindful, bermakna atau meaningful, dan menggembirakan atau joyful. Melalui olah pikir, olah hati, olah rasa, dan olahraga untuk mewujudkan profil lulusan yang sekarang menjadi 8 dimensi. Mudah-mudahan Kemendikbudristek bisa meluncurkan learning progression tadi. Kalau NPDL punya 6, Kemendikbudristek punya 8, sehingga Bapak Ibu punya panduan yang dimaksud dengan berwawasan global atau kewarganegaraan itu apa dan bagaimana perkembangannya. Kalau di dalam dokumen kurikulum Merdeka, kita sudah ada panduannya untuk progression, profil pelajar Pancasila. Tetapi bukan progression secara umum, yang kita dapat adalah berdasarkan fase. Fase foundation, fase A, fase B, ketercapaiannya seperti apa. Nah, mudah-mudahan dengan pembelajaran mendalam, tim Kemendikbud bisa segera untuk menciptakan atau membuat atau mendesain bagaimana sih learning progression di dalam konsep pembelajaran yang meaningful, mindful, dan joyful tadi. Kerangka berpikir atau kerangka kerja dari pembelajaran mendalam, saya melihat ada kemiripan. Tetapi memang fokusnya pada pembelajaran mendalam menjadi 8 profil lulusan tadi. Untuk menciptakan pembelajaran yang menghasilkan 8 profil lulusan tadi, maka mahasiswa atau siswa harus mampu memahami materi yang diajarkan, mengapa mereka belajar itu, dan bagaimana mereka belajar. Dari video yang disampaikan oleh Max, tadi terlihat siswa dengan sangat jelas mampu menjelaskan apa yang dia pelajari, kenapa ini penting untuk dipelajari, dan bagaimana mereka melakukan pembelajaran itu. Jadi satu adalah memahami. Yang kedua, bagaimana mengaplikasikan pendekatan atau pembelajaran itu di dalam proses pembelajaran maupun kehidupan keseharian mereka. Yang ketiga, harus merefleksikan bagaimana proses pembelajarannya, apa yang dicapai, apa yang mampu untuk dikembangkan. Nah, Bapak Ibu, maka pembelajaran itu harus kita mulai dari diri kita sendiri. Kita mencoba untuk memahami apa sih deep learning, bagaimana konteks di tempat kita, bagaimana nanti implementasinya. Apakah bisa kita bandingkan Indonesia dengan Australia, dengan negara-negara yang sudah mengimplementasikan deep learning? Maka bagaimana konsep itu akan bisa kita adopsi dan adaptasi sesuai dengan karakter dan kondisi yang berlaku di Indonesia. Termasuk di dalam kerangkanya ada lingkungan pembelajaran atau learning design, praktik pedagogis, kemudian kemitraan pembelajaran, dan pemanfaatan digital yang di frameworknya NPDL, leveraging digitals, yang sudah juga disampaikan oleh Max. Ada 8 profil lulusan yang disampaikan di dalam dokumen kajian akademik pembelajaran mendalam. Tentu nanti coba akan kita bandingkan apa bedanya dengan profil pelajar Pancasila. Kalau saya melihat sebenarnya tidak banyak berbeda, hanya ditambahkan kemandirian dan kesehatan. Juga hanya berubah nama. Mudah-mudahan nanti kementerian segera bisa meluncurkan alasan kenapa berubah nama. Jangan yang penting baru sehingga ganti cover saja, tetapi isinya hampir sama. Misalnya, dulu kewarganegaraan itu namanya bukan kewarganegaraan. Kemudian penalaran kritis itu dulu berpikir kritis. Kemudian bekerja sama itu namanya dulu bergotong royong, sekarang kolaborasi. Hampir-hampir sama, hanya beda judulnya saja dari 8 kompetensi atau profil lulusan yang disampaikan. Nah, bagaimana dengan pencapaian pembelajarannya? Ini di dalam kajian akademiknya sudah ada, tetapi belum juga ada detailsnya. Kalau tadi NPDL sudah ada progression-nya, mulai dari limited, emerging, developing, sampai ke proficient. Nah, ini yang di konsepnya deep learning ada 5 tingkatan. Belum berkembang, dasar atau foundation, berkembang atau developing, cakap atau secure, dan unggul atau excellent. Di ketiga, kompetensi yang bawah itu adalah pembelajaran dasar, belum menyentuh pada pembelajaran deep learning yang diinginkan atau didesain atau digagas oleh kementerian kita. Nah, ini Bapak Ibu, dimensi dan progres perkembangan profil pelajar Pancasila yang didesain atau dikeluarkan oleh Badan Standar Kurikulum dan Asesmen Pendidikan. Maka kita lihat sub-elemen dari kompetensi bergotong royong adalah komunikasi untuk mencapai tujuan bersama. Tetapi yang membedakan dengan NPDL, kalau NPDL bisa untuk umum karena dia tidak dijelaskan usia rentannya. Di dalam profil pelajar Pancasila, ketercapaiannya selain progressions pada kompetensinya, juga progressions pada usianya. Sehingga kita bisa melihat, oh di akhir fase PAUD itu harusnya siswa kita mampu menyimak informasi sederhana dan mengungkapkannya dalam bahasa lisan. Kompetensi yang diharapkan untuk tingkat PAUD itu harusnya siswanya bisa menyimak informasi. Kemudian di fase A, fase B, dan seterusnya. Sehingga ada progressions Bapak Ibu. Nah, nanti dalam implementasi Bapak Ibu untuk mengimplementasikan deep learning, mohon fokus pada ketercapaian profil lulusan. Mungkin nanti Bapak Ibu akan bertanya, loh Pak Yanuar, lalu apa bedanya dengan materi-materi pembelajaran yang harus dikuasai oleh siswa-siswi kita? Karena mungkin tidak semua materi pembelajaran itu bisa digunakan untuk mencapai profil lulusan. Nah, ini adalah kreativitas Bapak Ibu, bagaimana apapun yang kita pelajari di kurikulum kita, salah satu tugas pokok Bapak Ibu adalah untuk menghantarkan siswa-siswi kita mencapai profil lulusan yang telah ditetapkan oleh pemerintah. Nah, di dalam prinsip pembelajaran deep learning ada 3 prinsip. Yang pertama adalah berkesadaran. Pengalaman belajar peserta didik yang diperoleh ketika mereka memiliki kesadaran untuk menjadi pembelajar yang aktif dan mampu meregulasi diri. Peserta didik memahami tujuan pembelajaran. Sehingga di kelas-kelas Bapak Ibu, alangkah baiknya sebelum memulai proses pembelajaran tentang satu topik atau materi, relate atau hubungkan materi itu dengan bagaimana kehidupan keseharian mereka, atau bagaimana materi itu akan berdampak pada kehidupan di luar kelas mereka. Kemudian termotivasi secara intrinsik untuk belajar, serta aktif mengembangkan strategi belajar untuk mencapai tujuan. Peserta didik yang pembelajaran bermakna dapat menerapkan pengetahuannya ke dalam situasi nyata, buat bermakna apa yang mereka pelajari. Proses belajar peserta didik tidak hanya sebatas memahami informasi dan penguasaan konten, namun berorientasi pada kemampuan mengaplikasikan pengetahuannya. Pembelajaran dengan prinsip atau pendekatan menggembirakan merupakan suasana belajar yang positif. Jadi secara emosional sehingga lebih mudah memahami, mengingat, dan menerapkan pengetahuannya. Nah, Bapak Ibu, sekarang mari coba kita bandingkan antara konsep deep learning internasional dari NPDL dengan konsep pembelajaran mendalam. Dari definisi yang saya sampaikan tadi, terlihat bahwa new pedagogies for deep learning focus on the outcome, the 6 global competencies, process acquiring 6 global competencies. Sedangkan di proses pembelajaran yang saya sampaikan tadi lebih menekankan pada proses penciptaan suasana belajar dalam proses pembelajaran yang bermakna, menyenangkan atau menggembirakan, dan berkesadaran. Dalam hal tujuan, deep learning di international context fokus pada 6 Cs. Sedangkan di pembelajaran mendalam, Indonesia punya 8 profil lulusan. Keimanan, ketakwaan kepada Tuhan terhadap Tuhan Yang Maha Esa, kewarganegaraan, penalaran kritis, kreativitas, kolaborasi, kemandirian, kesehatan, dan komunikasi. Kalau kita bandingkan antara framework atau kerangka kerja New Pedagogies for Deep Learning dengan pembelajaran mendalam, sama tapi berbeda. Ini merupakan, saya pikir, improvement atau pendekatan sesuai dengan karakter di Indonesia. Karena untuk karakter, misalnya Six Global Competencies, di Indonesia sebagai negara yang berketuhanan, negara yang berlandaskan pada nilai-nilai ketuhanan, maka karakter itu dipisah menjadi 2. Keimanan kepada Tuhan Yang Maha Esa dan kemandirian, itu karakter. Kalau kita baca deskripsi dari keimanan, ketakwaan kepada Tuhan Yang Maha Esa dan kemandirian dengan deskripsi dari karakter, maka keduanya ada kemiripan di dalam frameworknya. Mudah-mudahan ke depan pemerintah bisa mengkaji lebih dalam dan segera bisa memberikan dokumen-dokumen sebagai panduan kita untuk mengimplementasikan deep learning di kelas pembelajaran kita. Nah, Bapak Ibu, sekarang mari kita bandingkan kompetensi dari 6 Global Competencies dengan profil lulusan. Karena sama yang tadi saya sampaikan. Di Global Competencies adalah citizenships, thinking like global citizens, considering individual and societal well-being, and global issues based on deep understanding of diverse values and worldviews, with genuine interest, empathy, compassion, and ability to solve ambiguous and complex real-world problems that impact equity and human and environmental strategies. Kita lihat deskripsi dari kewarganegaraan di Indonesia. Individu yang memiliki rasa cinta tanah air, mentaati aturan dan norma sosial dalam kehidupan bermasyarakat, memiliki kepedulian, awareness, tanggung jawab sosial, serta berkomitmen untuk menyelesaikan masalah nyata yang terkait keberlanjutan manusia dan lingkungan. Sehingga memang apa yang didesain di Indonesia itu sudah inline dengan konsep deep learning yang ada di New Pedagogies for Deep Learning. Ada 2 tambahan, yaitu kemandirian dan kesehatan. Ini yang merupakan pecahan dari another competencies of deep learning. Bagaimana dengan progresnya, Bapak Ibu? Kita bandingkan di deep learning itu ada 5 development progress, mulai dari limited, emerging, developing, accelerating, and proficient. Di Indonesia sudah ada 5 juga perkembangan dari pembelajaran mendalam, mulai dari incompetence atau foundation atau dasar, developing berkembang, secure, dan itu adalah proses pembelajaran mentransformasi diri kita sendiri. Bapak Ibu, saya ingat quote yang diberikan oleh Mahatma Gandhi, be the change that you want to see in the world. Artinya, jadilah perubahan yang Bapak Ibu ingin lihat terjadi di dunia. Kalau Bapak Ibu menginginkan pendidikan dan kualitas pendidikan di Indonesia yang lebih baik, maka mari kita bersemangat untuk terus belajar dan menjadi pribadi yang lebih baik. Kalau semua orang berpikir mulai dari diri kita, mulai dari sekarang, maka insya Allah perubahan kecil itu akan menjadi sebuah gerakan yang nantinya akan menggerakkan bagaimana kualitas pendidikan di Indonesia bisa meningkat sesuai dengan harapan kita. Maka kami mengajak Bapak Ibu setelah workshop ini, mari lakukan refleksi. Apa yang kita tahu, apa yang kita pelajari tentang deep learning, dan bagaimana Bapak Ibu akan berkomitmen untuk mengimplementasikan deep learning pada diri sendiri. Bagaimana Bapak Ibu belajar deep learning dengan mindful, meaningful, dan joyful. Buatlah komunitas-komunitas di lingkungan Bapak Ibu untuk belajar bersama. Kami punya komunitas deeplearning.indonesia yang nanti Bapak Ibu juga bisa bergabung supaya kita bisa belajar bersama memahami konsep deep learning baik di dunia internasional maupun Indonesia. Sehingga Bapak Ibu, let's start from us, let's start now. Be the change that you want to see in the world. Deep learning bukan sekedar kebijakan. Oke lah, pemerintah nanti ganti kementerian, ganti kebijakan, ganti pemerintah, ganti kurikulum. It's okay. But kita perlu komitmen pada diri sendiri bahwa apapun yang kita lakukan, berikan yang terbaik pada apa yang kita lakukan. Dan menjadilah versi terbaik dari diri kita dengan pembelajaran yang mendalam. Mari jadikan deep learning atau pembelajaran mendalam ini sebagai sebuah gerakan bersama. Yuk kita mulai dari diri kita mulai dari sekarang. Tidak perlu terus bergantung pada pemerintah, nunggu pelatihan, nunggu training, nunggu webinar dan sebagainya. Itu yang kami lakukan di Universitas Lampung. Kami belajar secara mandiri dan kami berkomitmen untuk mengimplementasikan deep learning sebagai sebuah gerakan di komunitas kita. Ini Bapak Ibu yang disampaikan oleh Max, start small, start slow. Kami berkomitmen untuk terus bertemu dan melakukan diskusi-diskusi secara mendalam berbagai aspek tentang deep learning. Ke depan yang kami akan rancang adalah bagaimana kita bisa memahami 6 global competencies tadi. Karena tentunya tidak semua dari kita mahir berbahasa Inggris dan dapat tadi bahwa kami belajar deep learning dari kami kepada bangsa dan negara. Tidak ada lain yang kami harapkan kecuali mari kita sama-sama berkolaborasi dan berkontribusi bagi pendidikan Indonesia. Karena kalau kita ingin pendidikan kita baik, ya mulai dari diri kita, mulai dari sekarang. Ini kami pertama kali approach Max dan beliau sangat welcome sekali karena saya percaya belajar segala sesuatunya harus pada ahlinya, harus pada sumber aslinya. Sampai hari ini Max tetap berkomitmen untuk mendampingi kita semua untuk belajar bagaimana mengimplementasikan deep learning. Nah, selanjutnya kami di komunitas punya pertemuan rutin dan mudah-mudahan ke depan kami akan fokus kepada 6 global competencies dan profil lulusan. Coba kita bedah di Indonesia, berapa banyak sih Bapak Ibu yang sudah memahami dan coba mengimplementasikan pembelajarannya untuk mencapai profil lulusan. Baik di profil pelajar Pancasila maupun nanti profil lulusan yang 8 didesain oleh teman-teman di kementerian. Bagaimana mengukur tingkat pembelajaran? Kami melakukan refleksi, bagaimana sih kompetensi komunikasi saya? Apakah saya berkomunikasi dengan baik atau tidak berdasarkan pada perkembangannya. Dan nanti ke depan kita juga akan merancang bagaimana pembelajaran deep learning bisa diimplementasikan di kelas-kelas kami di Universitas Lampung. Kami mengajak Bapak Ibu untuk bergabung di komunitas ini sehingga kita bisa saling berbagi, saling sharing bagaimana kita mempelajari deep learning melalui deep learning dan bagaimana kita mengimplementasikannya. Terakhir, apa yang selanjutnya harus kita lakukan? Tadi di awal sudah saya sampaikan rekomendasi bagi kementerian, bagi teman-teman pemangku kebijakan, pembuat keputusan, jangan hanya fokus kepada apa yang harus kita lakukan ke depan. Fokus pada bagaimana melakukan sesuatu yang baru. Tetapi mohon karena Indonesia konteksnya adalah negara besar, terbesar keempat di dunia untuk sistem pendidikannya. Maka siapapun yang menjadi nahkodanya, siapapun yang menjadi pimpinannya, saya membayangkan begini Bapak Ibu. Pendidikan itu seperti kita membangun sebuah bangunan masa depan yang kita rancang. Arsitekturnya sudah ada di dalam Blueprint Pendidikan Indonesia 2045. Siapapun nanti yang menjadi kepala tukangnya, maka dia harus melanjutkan apa yang sudah dibangun oleh tim atau tukang sebelumnya. Jangan sampai hanya ganti menteri yang penting kebijakannya baru ganti. Sehingga apapun yang sudah dicapai sebelumnya tidak menjadi pertimbangan bagaimana mengevaluasi dan memperbaikinya. Saran saya, tolong teman-teman Bapak Ibu di tim kementerian yang sudah diimplementasikan di kurikulum Merdeka dengan berbagai metode pembelajaran, dengan berbagai platformnya, tolong dievaluasi dulu secara mendalam. Bagaimana implementasinya, bagaimana kekurangan dan kelebihannya. Based on that data, then we can design the future. Karena pendidikan itu bukan berjalan, belajar sambil berjalan. Konsekuensinya, Indonesia terdiri dari ribuan guru. Kami, Bapak Ibu di Universitas Lampung, dengan teknologi, dengan dosen, dengan kepakaran kami, menemukan berbagai kesulitan untuk memahami deep learning. Bagaimana mungkin kita bisa beranggapan bahwa Bapak Ibu guru di berbagai pelosok Indonesia dengan berbagai karakter dan tantangannya, dengan berbagai hal yang harus dilakukan oleh guru, mereka akan cepat belajar tentang deep learning. Sehingga deep learning jangan dijadikan hanya sebagai kebijakan, tapi menjadi sebuah gerakan bersama bagaimana semua kita berkomitmen untuk meningkatkan kualitas pendidikan di Indonesia. Learning, deep learning through deep learning. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu atas partisipasi Bapak Ibu sampai siang ini. Alhamdulillah pesertanya masih sangat banyak dan Bapak Ibu kami berharap Bapak Ibu yang menjadi penggerak implementasi deep learning, pembelajaran yang benar-benar mendalam dalam lingkungan Bapak Ibu, baik itu lingkungan pribadi, lingkungan keluarga, kelas, institusi, dan yang lebih luas nanti untuk Indonesia. Terima kasih, saya kembalikan kepada moderator, silakan jika ada yang hal-hal yang ingin ditanyakan. Terima kasih, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Pak Yanuar atas paparan terkait dengan tadi 6 kompetencies in NPDL dan juga kaitannya dengan 8 dimensi profil lulusan ketika itu diimplementasikan di Indonesia ya Pak ya. Mari kita buka sesi pertanyaan karena memang waktu kita terbatas ya Pak ya hingga pukul 12. Jadi kita buka satu dari chat room, satu dari raise hand. Silakan boleh tim tampilkan pertanyaan yang sudah diseleksi tadi. Baik. Di sini ada 4 pertanyaan yang sudah kita seleksi. Mungkin salah satu dari pertanyaan ini akan dijawab oleh Pak Yanuar. Karena kalau misalnya akan dijawab semua, itu akan taking much times. Dan belum lagi kita
Baik.
menunggu untuk raise hand, Pak.
Ya, baik. I
Bisa
have a question.
dibaca, Pak,
Oke,
di
yang kedua ya,
screen-nya.
yang dari
Oke, baik.
Murni Samosir ya. Saya rasa kurikulum deep learning sebagai penguatan kurikulum merdeka yang landasan filosofisnya sangat berpihak kepada anak. Bagaimana kurikulum ini juga menyasar paradigma para pemangku kepentingan di dunia pendidikan sehingga kurikulum ini berdampak signifikan terhadap pembentukan generasi Indonesia yang unggul. Baik, terima kasih Bapak atau Ibu Murni Samosir. Saya ingin meluruskan seperti yang disampaikan oleh Bapak Menteri bahwa deep learning atau pembelajaran mendalam itu bukan kurikulum baru. Tetapi seperti yang saya sampaikan di dalam definisinya, deep learning itu adalah pendekatan pembelajaran. Bagaimana menciptakan pembelajaran yang lebih bermakna, lebih berkesadaran, dan lebih menggembirakan. Saya pikir, saya sepakat dengan apa yang disampaikan oleh Max Drumy, seharusnya precision without prescriptions. Artinya, pemerintah, kementerian menyerahkan kepada Bapak Ibu untuk bagaimana implementasi deep learning sesuai dengan karakter. Saya paham bahwa tidak semua Pak Yanuar, Bapak Ibu guru dosen bisa diberikan dilepas begitu saja
Ini
untuk
raise hand mau. Sorry.
betul. Sehingga saya juga mengharap tim kementerian untuk bisa memberikan panduan-panduan globalnya. apa yang harus dilakukan dan bagaimana melaksanakan deep learning. Bapak Ibu, seperti yang kita tahu di setiap pergantian kepemerintahan, fokus utamanya adalah mengurangi beban dosen, mengurangi beban administrasi guru. Itu yang disampaikan oleh Mas Menteri di awal kepemimpinannya, tetapi begitu implementasinya berjalan, banyak platform, banyak administrasi dan sebagainya. Harapannya siklus itu tidak terus berulang. Sehingga mudah-mudahan kita bisa benar-benar komitmen pada bagaimana pemerintah mengurangi beban administrasi tenaga pengajar sehingga benar-benar mereka bisa fokus untuk mengajar, untuk meningkatkan kompetensi siswanya. Itu mungkin jawaban yang pertama. Yang kedua, pada mulanya deep learning dimaknai sebagai machine learning dan AI learning. Betul, Bapak Ibu, di dalam konteks AI dan komputer. Deep learning versi Indonesia lebih dimaknai sebagai pendekatan atau strategi proses pembelajaran. Yang saya tanyakan, bagaimana validitas teoretik deep learning versi Indonesia jika teori asal deep learning adalah machine learning? Apakah teorisasi yang dilakukan dapat diterima secara ilmiah? Bapak Ibu, memang penggunaan term kata deep learning itu bukan hanya menjadi kewenangan satu bidang. Sama-sama deep learning, seperti yang saya sampaikan, deep learning yang NPDL, New Pedagogies for Deep Learning, itu juga sudah melalui berbagai kajian literatur, berbagai kajian teoritis. Sehingga Bapak Ibu, kita memang berbeda, tetapi bukan berarti harus mutually exclusive. Kalau satu ada, satunya nggak boleh. Boleh ada keduanya, deep learning dalam hal AI dan komputer boleh berjalan sesuai dengan apa yang mereka lakukan. Deep learning dalam proses pendidikan dan pembelajaran manusia juga ada landasan teorinya. Sehingga dua-duanya bisa berjalan, beriringan, tetapi Bapak Ibu harus tidak boleh confuse. Kalau cari referensi tentang deep learning, harus yang berkaitan dengan pembelajaran dan pendidikan, bukan pada pembelajaran bermakna atau deep learning di komputer. Ibu Surisma Munir, deep learning requires considerations of human resource, learning facilities, supporting literacy. How the teacher's strategy is to implement this deep learning specifically in the PJOK. Thank you. Baik, benar Bapak Ibu, deep learning itu requires atau membutuhkan analisis sumber daya yang kita butuhkan. Oleh sebab itu, Bapak Ibu nggak perlu risau, nggak perlu galau. Deep learning lakukan dengan menyenangkan. Implementasikan belajar deep learning itu tanpa tekanan. Oh, harus begini, harus selesai. Enggak, Bapak Ibu. Deep learning, lakukan proses pembelajaran deep learning itu sesuai dengan apa sih deep learning? Kenapa saya harus belajar deep learning? Bagaimana saya bisa belajar deep learning? Aplikasikan dengan pembelajaran yang bermakna, berkesadaran, dan juga menggembirakan bagi diri sendiri. Kalau kita sendiri tidak bisa mengimplementasikan deep learning dari proses pembelajaran kita, maka akan sangat berat bagi kita untuk bisa mengimplementasikan itu di dalam pembelajaran anak-anak didik kita. Sehingga saya dan kami di komunitas Deep Learning Indonesia yang kami lakukan adalah implementasikan deep learning itu di diri kita, apa kendalanya. Mudah-mudahan dengan mengetahui kendala yang ada di kita juga bisa berbagi pengalaman. Kalau siswanya malas, kita pernah malas belajar tentang deep learning. Kenapa? Mungkin itu juga yang menjadi alasan dari teman-teman atau mahasiswa kita atau siswa kita untuk tidak semangat belajar tentang deep learning. Mungkin itu Bu Ima.
Baik Pak, kita buka satu pertanyaan dari Raise Hand ya Pak ya.
Boleh, boleh.
Oke, pertanyaan terakhir dari Pak Mian Siahaan. Boleh?
Baik, terima kasih Bu Siti.
Terima kasih Pak.
Yang saya hormati Pak Yanuar Miansian dari Medan ini. Pak,
Siap.
mengenai tadi saya sudah komentari di chat kita sebenarnya. Yang pertama itu mengenai deep learning ini, itu seperti apa yang sudah disampaikan oleh Pak Yanuar dengan definisinya, itu bagus. Tetapi dalam praktek kesehariannya, saya melihat guru-guru kita itu betul-betul belum deep memahami, mengerti, mendalami betul tentang materi-materi yang ada. Jadi sepertinya hanya kulitnya aja. Kalau disebut menyenangkan, mereka kan bikin menyenangkan dengan adanya ice breaking, senang dia, gitu ya. Tapi ilmu dalamnya itu yang betul-betul substansial itu nggak dapat, Pak. Contoh, kalau ada rumus matematika, itu kita guru hanya menjelaskan atau ya menjelaskan ini loh rumusnya, kemudian cara makainya seperti ini. Itu nggak tahu gurunya dari mana datangnya itu rumus, untuk apa itu rumus, dan bagaimana memakai rumus itu. Nah, di situ deep-nya kalau menurut saya ya. Nah, tinggal bagaimana metode, cara gurunya untuk menyampaikan itu supaya happiness, supaya anak-anak bisa begitu menyenangkan menerima ilmu yang lebih substansi itu. Learning itu kuncinya adalah bagaimana guru untuk bisa betul-betul tahu tentang materi itu. Oleh sebab itu perlu ada dilaksanakan peningkatan kompetensi yang memang betul juga mendalam oleh orang-orang yang sebagai fasilitator yang betul-betul tahu dengan itu, Pak. Gimana, Pak? Menurut
Baik.
saya begitu, Pak. Nah, ini diskusi, Pak. Makasih, Pak.
Iya, baik. Terima kasih Pak Mian. Sepakat, sepemahaman sekali saya, Bapak. Sehingga di rekomendasi saya yang pertama, jangan meminta dulu guru untuk membelajarkan deep learning. Tapi tolong teman-teman di kementerian juga memahami deep learning ini secara mendalam. Maka yang pertama saya sampaikan, jangan kesusu, jangan gerusa-gerusu. Pahami
Setuju.
konsepnya secara mendalam.
Sangat setuju.
Bagaimana nanti rencana implementasi itu bisa kita laksanakan di Indonesia dengan kondisi Indonesia yang
Ya.
sampai kita menjadi pada circle yang sama. Lalu ketika ada pejabat yang dan sebagainya, tanpa melakukan refleksi dan evaluasi pada apa yang sudah kita dapatkan. Saya sepakat sekali Pak Mian, maka mudah-mudahan diskusi kita ini bisa sampai kepada kementerian, sehingga sebelum meminta guru untuk mengimplementasikan deep learning, teman-teman di kementerian, trainer, fasilitator, harus dulu belajar dengan menggunakan deep learning. Karena tidak mungkin kita akan menciptakan deep learning kalau kita sendiri tidak deep learner. Oleh sebab itu, Pak Mian dan teman-teman semuanya, mari kita menjadi perubahan itu. Mari kita mulai dari diri kita sendiri untuk menjadi deep learner. Pak Mian, saya yakin Bapak juga punya teman-teman di sekitar lingkungan kerja Bapak Ibu. Ayo kita bentuk komunitas, belajar bersama-sama, implementasikan deep learning. Karena ketika deep learning menjadi sebuah kebijakan yang dipaksakan, kamu harus belajar tentang itu karena ke depan saya akan implementasi. Itu bukan sesuatu yang organik muncul dari kesadaran Bapak Ibu. Akhirnya apa? Ya sudah, yang penting dilaksanakan. Mau bikin joyful, ya sudah bikin game. Mau bikin meaningful, ya sudah sekedar memberikan pertanyaan. Tetapi landasan dari kenapa kita harus melakukan itu, mungkin itu yang perlu sama-sama kita lakukan. Oleh sebab itu, Pak Mian, kami di Universitas Lampung, beberapa orang ini yang menjadi panitia yang Bapak lihat, kami adalah orang-orang yang berkomitmen untuk menjadi deep learner ourselves, mengimplementasikan itu dalam berbagai diskusi kami, dan mudah-mudahan dari sini akan muncul deep learning yang semakin luas dan akan menjadi sebuah kebijakan. Saya sepakat sekali, Pak, mulai dari yang paling top sampai ke bawah harus belajar dengan menggunakan pendekatan deep learning dan menjadi deep learner themselves. Terima kasih banyak Pak Mian atas masukannya.
Baik, terima kasih. Bagaimana Pak Mian? Jelas ya Pak ya. Respon dari Pak Januar terkait dengan pertanyaan.
Sangat jelas dan sangat simpati saya kira.
Iya.
Dan harapannya juga kementerian bisa mendengarkan ini ya.
Amin.
Tidak membabi buta melaksanakannya gitu.
Ya,
Makasih.
terima kasih, Pak.
Makasih Pak Yadap.
Okay, it's enough for question and answer session. Daftar hadir Bapak Ibu
Yes.
sudah di-share ya. Silakan
Betul.
Baik, Bu Rahma, Bu
Mm-mm.
Siti Rahmasari, sebelum kita akhiri sesi, saya ingin menyampaikan kepada Bapak Ibu, mari menjadi pembelajar yang mendalam. Mari kita mulai dari diri kita, dimulai dari sekarang. Be the change that you want to see in the world. Bapak Ibu jadilah perubahan yang ingin Bapak Ibu lihat di dunia. Artinya kalau Bapak Ibu ingin pendidikan di Indonesia menjadi lebih baik, maka ayo kita mulai dengan menjadi pelopor perubahan itu. Lakukan mulai dari diri kita, lakukan mulai dari sekarang. Terima kasih, selamat siang Bapak Ibu semuanya. Terima kasih sudah bergabung dan mudah-mudahan apa yang kita diskusikan bisa menjadi ilmu dan pemahaman yang bermanfaat serta menjadi keberkahan bagi diri kita sendiri, bagi lingkungan kita, utamanya bagi bangsa dan negara. Mudah-mudahan apa yang kita lakukan menjadi amal jariah kebaikan yang bermanfaat tidak hanya di dunia tetapi juga di akhirat. Terima kasih. Mohon maaf apabila yang saya sampaikan ada yang kurang, merupakan keterbatasan saya sebagai seorang pembelajar dan saya terbuka untuk terus belajar bersama Bapak Ibu semuanya. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have finally come to the end part of this seminar, and that is a final closing remark from Mr. Yanwar. And before we close our webinar, please allow me to take some highlighted points from this today's session. And of course, I do like the praise from Mr. Max say that education is the most powerful force for improving the world by transforming individual and system. And through deep learning, especially for new pedagogies for deep learnings, engage the world and change the world. So, and finally, I would like to thank to the speakers, Mr. Max and also Mr. Yanwar, for their informative and also interesting presentation, and all the participants for their active participation. Ladies and gentlemen, please give applause for our speakers. And for you all, thank you very much. And remember, I should remind everyone in this room that we will be seeing you again on the second part of our seminar, and our teams will give you information in a WhatsApp group very soon. So catch you all later, and thank you very much. Because before I leave the session, let me to saying something, this is pantun, karena Bu Cika sudah mengawali dengan pantun, saya akhiri juga dengan pantun. Ini ada roman-roman Lampungnya ya Bapak Ibu ya. Bermain air di pantai Krui. Jangan cakep Bapak Ibu, cantik gitu ya.
Oh, cantik.
Ya, ulangi ya. Bermain air di pantai Krui.
Cantik.
Cantik ya. Hati-hati jangan sampai tenggelam.
Cantik.
Ada Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, saya akhiri dengan mengucap salam. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Over to you, Dr. Cika.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oke, cantik ya. Thank you, Dr. Siti Rahmasari, as our moderator
Most
today.
welcome.
And of course, thank you for our amazing speakers. So, ladies and gentlemen, finally we come to the end of the international webinar of what's, why, and how deep learning in international and Indonesia context. Mari Bapak Ibu, kita sama-sama mengimplementasikan deep learning ini dimulai dari diri kita sendiri dan sebagai pembelajar sepanjang hayat. So, let's foster deep learning in the classroom so that all students are able to address global challenge, encourage the world, and change the world. start. Dan untuk informasi, Bapak Ibu semua yang ingin menjadi anggota community dari Deep Learning Indonesia, Deep Learning Indonesia Community, please kontak admin Miss Chasya dan Mr. Ubaidillah ya, yang ada di WhatsApp group, di grup WhatsApp group untuk yang webinar, tapi itu nanti ada WhatsApp group untuk khusus kepada komunitas deep learning-nya untuk belajar ya. Okay, I'm Chika Rahayu. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Thank you for the speakers, moderator, komite, and FKIP Unila, Deep Learning Indonesia, and all the participants for all of your active participation. Thank you and see you at our next event. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu semuanya.
Terima kasih
Selamat
Bapak Ibu.
mengimplementasikan deep learning.
Yap.
Terima kasih.